human being. You have actually covered yourself.
I'd like to welcome out and get our meeting for May 27th, our regular meeting called to order. And for the record, it is 6:33. And Mr. Cordova, would you lead us? Oh, call roll, please. And then afterwards, we'll have Mr. Cordova lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would.
Mayor Barrone?
Present.
Councilmember Hahn?
Here.
Councilmember Peralta?
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Here.
Councilmember Cantu? Here.
Please, if Mr. Cordova, if you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you'll just remain standing for a brief moment of silence for, we just celebrated a holiday in remembrance of our veterans and that their families and all that they stood for during their time of service. Thank you. Council, approval of the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu? Yes. Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
So we'll go to approval of the minutes of May 8th, 2014, budget hearing minutes. Council?
Move to approve the May 8th budget hearing minutes.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
I'll second that.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cantu? Yes. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and move on to our awards and recognitions. I just really want to take this opportunity to applaud those Bantam ice hockey teams. We have a number of athletes. The athletes in our community continue to step up the plate and take it to that next level. And I really want to take this opportunity to congratulate them. And Mr. Landgraf, I know I'm going to call on you every time we have another group of fine athletes to recognize, and I want to turn to you for this duty, sir. Thank you. And again, I don't know, I know we have one of their coaches, if you want to come up and talk to us a little bit about their season before we really recognize, I would welcome you to come on up and tell a little bit about the season and how it transpired and that type of thing, if you'd like to, please. Please. And you can.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Charlie Raskovics. I was the head coach of the Bantams this year. We had a great season. Started slow. We were always the last to get on the ice compared to the Albuquerque teams and the Santa Fe teams. But our kids always make up for it with a great effort. And we came up against our arch rival nemesis, the Los Alamos Bantam team, for the championship. And it was a very tight game, very exciting game. And the great thing is that this group of kids played together real well as a team, came together and supported each other, and really made for a fun group of kids to coach. And on behalf of our Bantam team and all the teams in our recreational league, I want to put out a big thanks to the support of the town. The parents, of course, of the kids, they're always there to support them. But the Parks and Rec folks at the Youth and Family Center, led by Brian, and then all the folks that are working there, do a great job. They're really real positive about the kids, and they really help us take advantage of this great ice and this great facility. And they're a big part of our success because they make that place work well, and they make great ice for us. And they're really good when we have these big tournaments that come into town when the place is just packed all day long, all evening long. And they really do a fine job for us. So on behalf of the team and the league, I want to thank the town and the rec staff for doing such a great job. And I want to thank my Bantam guys for making me feel pretty good about being a coach and bringing in a championship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach, and we really applaud you. Again, we really want to recognize the parents, the families of these young athletes. It's hard to sometimes have early morning practices, late evening practices, practices that, they need rides, they need lunch, they need support traveling out of town. So again, thank you for all that support that you offer these young people in our community. So, Mr. Landgraf, if you would.
What all of you did this year was incredible. It speaks for itself, the achievement. But I'd just really like to thank all the parents, all of the kids for participating, doing their best every time, Miss Matz, of course. And just for, without all of this, kids don't really have a place to go. It's a great thing that gets them involved in their community and really helping the town because of the economic benefits that it brings with all the people here. So to the awards, let's start with Kevin Allen. Steve Archuleta.
Maybe if you'll stay up here, maybe we can get a picture of all you guys, all the athletes.
Gus Beckwith. Arya Bowden.
Way to go.
Finn Campbell.
Congratulations.
Jake Daneman. Alejandro Espada. Esparaza. John Escabel. No Garcia. No. No way. No way. Liam Haworth. Theo Hummel. Justin Lucero. Brandon Martinez. Max Mount. Also Simon Mount. Noah Ray. Leandro Richard. Sean Romero. Ryan Vigil. Robbie Wooldridge.
Congratulations.
And to all the coaches now, Charlie Raskovics. Okay. Mark Richard.
Congratulations.
Jalmar Bowden. Kyoko Hummel. Congratulations on your year. You did an amazing thing, and you should be really proud of what you did. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll go on to our next item is Citizens Forum. Citizens wishing to speak shall live in their opportunity to do so for 5 minutes. No action will be taken. Jeff, please.
Thank you and good evening. I have 6 issues. I'll be quick.
Okay.
Any adult being paid $10 or less per hour might well be considered a slave, working for slave wages. Many of us have made bad choices in our lives, many times very self-destructive. Thousands of books are written by sociologists and psychologists addressing why we are the way we are, beginning at the moment of conception or even earlier. But regardless of our situation, the United States, through Obamacare, has finally joined the civilized world in bringing dignity to all our citizens by providing universal health care. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, and the earliest this could change is with an enlightened U.S. Congress in 2017. Nationally, over 300 municipalities have instituted a minimum wage or living wage. We must join this group. We've gone over 2 years without a free box, but the passage of time has not blunted the pain of its demise. The cruel Darren and Abigail had no use for the financially distressed in our community, including children. It is estimated that $40,000 a year would cover the cost of reopening and manning this facility. I asked the council and mayor to act on this. To my knowledge, the Taos Fiesta Council has yet to put in a request for funds for the July event. Last year, the town gave this clandestine bunch $23,000, with another $12,000 or more spent on town employees working the event. I understand that the town administration is looking into the appropriateness of this $35,000 expenditures, but monies are budgeted once again to toss money in violation of the United States Constitution to this event. This situation should be placed on the June 11th Town Council agenda for full discussion. Our 4 most recent police chiefs, Rick Anglada, Ken Koch, Jerry Holgriff, and David Weaver, were corrupted by the previous mayor and town attorney. I'm specifically referring to the police departments both stealing my sign and allowing others to do the same. Tonight, I make the same plea that I've done several times over the years. That is, to protect both citizens and the police department, we need an independent, citizen-controlled police review board. We're just 6 weeks away from the 4th of July fireworks show. In deference to the $20,000 expense and the companion animals in our community, I ask that you cancel this event. To an outsider, it seems that we have a dedicated and very hardworking council and mayor, and that includes all 5 of you. I congratulate all of you and hope your energy can be sustained. Any questions?
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Northrup, I just want to thank you for giving this some thought and reporting into us. I'm grateful. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Fritz. Thanks for the job you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I know there's a number of items on the agenda. Please, there's people. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm Matt Foster. I was not able to attend the May 21st special meeting where I understand the council approved a construction project for Town Hall Drive. And I learned since then through a public records request that in fact the town staff, and I'm here to thank you and specifically French Espinoza for completing the bicycle level of service calculation as required by the bicycle master plan. And it received a bicycle level of service A which means that the roadway as designed, once it's finished, will be extremely safe for cyclists. So I wanted to reiterate my thanks and also offer my volunteer time in organizing, community activists and advocates in the cycling community to update the bicycle master plan and present it to the council for your consideration and adoption, and also work with the same group of cyclists to put together the maps and plans and policies for a bicycle or a multi-purpose trail network throughout the community. I've been working with the Del Norte group, the International Mountain Biking Association, and different cyclists throughout the community. So I just wanted to come in and acknowledge that it was done. Thank you for making it happen, and thank Mr. Espinoza especially, and offer my time and with your assistance through mapping and some commitments from the staff. Maybe over the next 4 or 6 months we can come back to the council and ask the town council and the county commissioners, either jointly or separately, to adopt updated trails, bicycle master plan and a trails master plan for the region.
Thank you,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Appreciate it. Before you take off, though, would you want to take the opportunity? I believe it's next weekend. They have a bicycle awareness ride that's going to happen from K-Town to the center of
Correct.
town. You want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure. It's right along the Rio. Starts at noon. There's going to be a party at Taos Mesa Brewery afterwards. There's going to be a bike ride, some awareness, education, all kinds of fun events. So it's sponsored by the International Mountain Biking Association, the Del Norte Trails Coalition, next Saturday at noon.
Okay. Thank you.
Meet at the Gorge.
Counselor, did you have? No. Thank you.
Matt,
Please.
I just want to thank you for your expertise, and we are going to need your guidance.
Happy to help. As you know, I'm like a dog on a bone with this. I'm not gonna let it go.
We're partial to dogs with bones.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Mr. Cordova?
Mr. Mayor, if I might,
Please.
just before Matt leaves. Matt, as you're aware, I received your memo when we did meet, and I sent a copy to Mr. Espinoza indicating that we would comply from here forward with the bicycle master plan on all capital improvement projects. As you're also aware, I was on the Del Norte Coalition representing the county. Commissioner Blankenhorn will now represent the county, and I will attend on behalf of the town, and we are totally committed to that plan.
And there is also a collaboration. Hopefully, we did receive some money for the Camino de Medio, and hopefully in that design stage that the bike paths can be designed in on the shoulders, or that's already been in the process. So thank you. Mr. Cordova?
Arsenio Cordova from El Prado. I've been gone the last couple of weeks, and I came back to the biggest scandal in Taos in a long time. As a previous administrator for the Department of Human Services and also a professor at the university, I was very distraught to read about the drug problem in our community. And what has happened within the last couple of weeks is very distressing. More distressing is the fact of the connections to the city council, the previous city council approving contracts for somebody who is now being accused of bringing drugs into our community. And one of the things that I think that a motion by one of the previous council members would condemning the actions of these people in our community and destroying our children. I have been a previous school board member, and we've addressed the drug problem on an ongoing basis in our community. When you see the kids that are the successes in our schools, and just tonight the awarding and everything else, but there are the other students that have fallen through the cracks because of the drug cartels that exist in our community. Many people had talked about it for a long time, but I think that it's time that as elected officials, you condemn these people that are destroying our community, destroying our children, and trying to do that. In a small community like Taos, everybody knows what's going on. and somebody's going to be a whistleblower sooner or later. And you know, I just want to say that a resolution by the council, by the county commission, Mayor Barrone, also would help to that our elected officials condemn these actions. You know, one of the headlines in the front page last week was, you know, there were connections to the city council, you know, also for, you know, awarding contracts to the same people that were providing these drugs to our community and destroying our community, or trying to destroy our community. This is why projects like the airport and things like that are questionable, because people think that those drugs can be flown into our communities. And you know, while that might not be true, a lot of people believe that, and they're talking about it in the community right now. So I was very distraught to hear that as I returned from our vacation. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Mr. Cordova.
Thank you, Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor?
Just real quick, and as this viewing audience I'm sure knows, our local newspaper tends to blow things completely out of proportion. That contract that was approved, as our finance department will attest to, went through the procurement process just like any other contract does. So there was no connection to City Hall other than the fact that, yes, the individuals connected did receive a contract through the Town of Taos, much like anybody else can. So Mr. Mayor felt it was just pertinent to put that out there. I do applaud our chief as well, who worked alongside Ms. Adama for several years. And all the while, as many people know within this community, that this investigation was going on for quite some time, that none of that was ever compromised by our own inside institution. So I applaud you, Chief. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody in the audience that doesn't have a specific item on the agenda that wishes to speak?
Mr.
Please.
Mayor?
Go ahead and start here.
Mr. Mayor, if we can simply how to mute.
She's here.
I'll be real quick on thank you for Mayor and Town Council and Town Manager allowing me to speak today. There was a resolution passed 2 weeks ago, and during that resolution to today, I've seen that it's gotten worse than better. And I was told that that it takes 30 days to implement a resolution. I guess my question would be, what about the existing resolution? Does that still stand? And my real reason that I'm here is I'm trying to open some eyes. There's a resolution, and there's actually a security issue here. The security issue is that the gates are left open and there's nobody that's attending to whoever comes in and dumps sludge. And that's one of my big issues there is how can these gates be left open with nobody attending to what's being dumped? I would call it a security breach of the EPA, Homeland Security, state rules and regulations. My question is, why is this being allowed to be taking place at the wastewater treatment plant? It's actually being jeopardized as we speak. Memorial Day, nobody was there. I've been going through there in the evenings, the hours that were supposed to be followed. We're going by the old resolution would be 7 to 7. Right now, there's nothing out there. I mean, what department in the town of Taos allows this type of activity without putting their foot down? And that's what I wanted to bring up. I guess, Mayor, I feel that you have a responsibility to put your foot down and take care of what's needed to be taken care of, because I don't see nobody stepping up and taking care of this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Rayo.
Thank you, Mr. Rayo.
Dr. Jaramillo, are you in the audience? If you would, please. Thank you. and welcome, and have a good evening.
Good evening. First, let me clarify that I actually had no intention of coming here, except my husband broke a window and talked to Mr. Gonzalez, and had a discussion with him kind of about the ongoing issues at the hospital. First, I really want to appreciate the fact that the task force is moving forward, and I think the members of Holy Cross Hospital feel like they've got a voice now that is being heard. Let me be also very clear in that, for those of you who don't know, we have lost two very professional and very good physicians from our hospital, okay? And they resigned because they didn't agree with how the tone of administration. This has been an ongoing issue. I would say both of them have really tried to kind of use what our means are, which are our medical staff committees, to try and change the tone and try and rectify it. Bottom line is, neither of them felt like they were being heard. I would say Dr. Foster, I think, put it best at one of the last meetings we had with Peter, when he said, you know, I could leave this hospital and just go do my job, take care of patients as a locums physician at another hospital, and all that stress is gone. He said, I can't do that here, because this is my community, this is my hospital, these are my friends and colleagues, and here, when I'm not heard, I'm very frustrated. And so his solution was to leave. And that was also Dr. Young's solution as well. Since then, essentially from my understanding, and I don't know the specific details on it, the CEO, Mr. Hofstetter, has contracted with a company called Apogee, which will be taking over what we call the hospitalist program. They're going to staff the hospital, and I spoke with them on Friday, with 2 physicians and 4 mid-levels, which is a decrease from the current care that you've been getting. I have some concerns about this. I voiced this in our last meeting, and I feel once again that I was not heard. Tomorrow is the board meeting at the hospital. I hope that people go and raise some concerns. I think there will be a lot of medical staff there. We need your support. We need to own our community hospital.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Dr. Jaramillo, thank you for taking the time. And what time is that board meeting tomorrow night, and where?
I believe it starts at 6, and it's at the boardroom at Holy Cross Hospital.
Thank you.
Mr. Cipri, thank you for coming in, and thank Bob for at least bringing the awareness, because I had no idea.
For coercing me into coming.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, and I would urge that this body watch the actions of Holy Cross, and especially now with our council member, Mr. Peralta, being able to sit on the Holy Cross Hospital Board of Directors, before we have another community fallout, much like we had with the nurses earlier last year, that we do keep a close eye and really monitor what's happening with the hospital. As we know, it is our hospital, it's our community hospital, and it's what provides not only the backbone to this community, but at the same point, a great educational base. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that one of us, I mean, I'll definitely volunteer to be there tomorrow evening, but perhaps maybe one other one of us could show up as well to continue to give that guidance and oversight.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and volunteer Councilman Gonzalez to be there. Mr. Peralta, are you going to be there? We don't want to run the risk of a quorum.
I was not planning to be there. Normally, it's the invitation is, or the vote is tomorrow night, and then I would take office in June.
Acceptable to you then, if I'm with Andrew? Okay, I'll be there. Thank you.
And,
thanks, Cipri.
Rick, would you pass this information on to the county, because the county does hold the contract to the hospital, so if you would pass this on. Thank you, Dr. Adami. So, again, I know we had a few more hands up there. Anybody wishing to speak? Please. It doesn't matter what order, just...
Hello, town councilors and Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak to you. My name is Marilyn Hoff. I am currently a resident of Arroyo Hondo. And I wish to talk about the airport expansion. This expansion is a special case where your decision will affect town voters much less than it will impact people in Taos Pueblo, Las Colonias, the Stagecoach area, Hondo Mesa, Arroyo Hondo, Arroyo Seco, Valdez, and even San Cristobal, who can't vote for or against you, as well as the other underrepresented eagles, cranes, elk, antelope, and bighorn sheep. Now, my first point is I'm going to try and go fast because I know you're in a hurry, that you think and assert that the expansion of the airport will boost the Taos economy by bringing in wealthy people to Taos Key Valley. And to my mind, this is just another wrinkle on trickle-down economics. That is, do something that benefits the rich, like cut their taxes, give them subsidized access to another playground, and the money they spend will trickle down to the rest of us. And then also cut programs for the poor. But will this fantasized influx of funds trickle down to the poor of Taos, give them jobs and lift them out of poverty, or will it simply make Taos too expensive for the non-rich to live here? Another justification I've heard for this new runway is that it will make it safer for our local pilots and emergency aircraft. These smaller planes can now take off from Taos Airport 94% of the time. Using the new crosswind runway, when winds change, will add another 1.5 days per month to this total, because small planes are very much affected by wind patterns and must take off against the wind when the winds are strong, which is most of the time. But the runway these small planes would use most of the time will be shortened by 420 feet to make room for the new 8,600-foot runway. How will the airport be safer on the whole for small planes, the ones most affected by winds, to be taking off on their present optimal prevailing wind runway if they have 400 less feet to attain liftoff? And why do we need a so-called crosswind runway so long that it would shorten the runway best suited for small planes? Why not a shorter crosswind runway? Okay, about 4 years ago, the Taos Town Council and the County Commissioners voted unanimously, as I remember, and I think maybe only Mayor Barrone would have been in on one of those votes, to oppose having Cannon Air Force Base make use of Taos County as a low-altitude training area, or LATA. This training program would involve two kinds of aircraft, the Osprey, which is a helicopter plane hybrid, and the C-130 air tanker, a huge plane with over 130 feet of wingspan and weighing 80,000 pounds when it's empty. The final EIS on LATA could be released any day now, and I've been worried that this new long runway would pave the way for the C-130 to operate out of Taos Airport. The Ospreys already land here. But I've been told that the C-130 could never land on this new runway because it's too heavy. Our new runway, I was told, could only support a plane weighing 60,000 pounds or less. This same claim is reinforced in the airport EIS with pictures of planes that could land at Taos. All those pictured weighed 60,000 pounds or under. But also in that EIS, the official designation for the size of the Taos runway is stated as 60,000-pound single wheel. What did the designation single wheel mean? Didn't planes have to land on at least two wheels? So I did some research. It turns out that the single wheel refers to all planes with just one wheel per strut, and struts are those little posts down which the wheels are attached to. Then I checked the specs of quite a few smaller airports, and some of them additionally set limits on the weight of planes with 2 wheels per strut instead of just 1, called dual-wheel planes. In general, limits for dual-wheel planes tended to be twice or even 3 times the weight as for so-called single-wheel planes. Taos Airport's extremely long and unusually strong runway would be able to handle much bigger planes than have been admitted to if the planes have dual wheels, which most very large planes do have. It could possibly handle planes weighing from 120,000 to 150,000 pounds. This new very long Taos runway would have no problem handling the landing and takeoff of a C-130, which has 3 pairs of dual wheels, or other such monster planes. In comparison, Las Vegas Airport's new runway, which has already attracted significant military traffic, is graded for only 20,000 pounds single wheel. And a C-130 has landed at Las Vegas on a runway 1/3 as strong as the one planned for Taos. I just have one more. Okay. One thing I've been told for certain, if military planes want to land at Taos Airport, nothing can prevent them. It's a public airport. No planes can be turned away. So will Taos Airport expansion help pave the way for LATA and fill our skies with Ospreys and C-130s? And is this why the FAA is suddenly so urgent about getting it done? Okay.
Thank you. If you'd like to leave a copy, if you would, we can.
Who do I give it to?
You can give it to Jake.
Thank you, and thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you.
Marilyn, thank you for your report.
Anybody else? Please. Good evening.
Good evening, all of you. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Margarita Denovan, and I live in Arroyo Hondo. Actually, Marilyn has given you many, many statistics. Our group has been doing a lot of research on this airport expansion. I just have to report that my son saw a C-130 circling. He was riding his bicycle, and he noticed this huge plane. And it was lining up to land at the airport, and it came in to land, but it didn't. It just took off. So I've been thinking that it was sort of like a training flight. The pilot was trying to see if he could line up. It bodes very seriously that our Air Force is planning to bring in these huge planes. I have many questions about the airport expansion, and I have many, many concerns. One question I have, when the new council met for the first time, they were pressured, and pressured is my word, but I feel that they were pressured to vote on the airport expansion. They were told they had to do it then, and they weren't given time to examine the implications of an expanded airport. And there are 3 things that I have heard many, many people say, the reason that they are for the expansion. One of them is small plane pilot safety. The other is fire safety. And the other is easy access from the Taos area on commercial flights to Albuquerque instead of having to drive. Well, Marilyn has just given you all sorts of statistics and information about the pilot safety issue. the information that we've been getting is that the plans call for shortening the prevailing wind runway that's in place now in order to make room for the expanded runway so that they won't cross, I think. So that means the one issue that a lot of citizens have been taking seriously and voting for, in the polls for the expansion is pilot safety, small pilot safety. And I don't think we've been told the truth about that. The other thing is fire. A lot of people were told that we needed this expanded runway in order to protect ourselves during this very dangerous fire possibility because of our drought. But that's not true either, because the large planes that bring in the retardant, they wouldn't have to land here. There would be no reason for them to land here, because once they've dumped their load of retardant, they can't land here and reload. They have to fly back to Albuquerque. So we don't need the expanded runway for safety purposes. Our airport handles the helicopters and the small planes that would bring in fire crews and scoop up water from the river. So that's not true either about needing it for fire safety. The other thing is I've heard several people say that it would be nice to be able to fly out of Taos. And I remember when I first moved here, there was a commercial shuttle. And I think they charged at that time, it was $75 one way. It went out of business. And then since then, 2 other ventures people have tried, and they've also gone out of business because there just weren't the customers. I think the last one was charging $98. I just heard someone thinks it's going to cost, I think, $34 or $35 to fly out of here on a commercial shuttle. Now, somebody's not being told the truth. And like I say, there's many, many, many concerns. And if I had to pick one, I would have to say it's our peaceful skies. And our community let the Air Force know that we don't want them practicing their low-level altitude flights over our area. And we continue not to want it. It would destroy so much. But one of the things that makes me very leery, if there's more military activity here, is that I understand that if a plane is coming in for a landing and it's going to be dangerous because of their heavy load of fuel, that they are permitted to dump their fuel. Now that fuel is going to go into our water or into our land and eventually make its way into our water. So there are a lot of reasons that I would like for us to take the time. I understand there's no master plan for this. And if Taos County taxpayers are going to be asked to pay for this airport, then I think we need to know what our money is going to be going into. Now, I did some tabling at SID, asking for people to sign petitions, and one woman told me, well, what's it to you? It's not going to cost you anything. It's federal money. And all I can say is, lady, federal money is my money. It's your money. It's tax money. It is our money. And we have every right to know how our money is going to be spent. And we have every right to expect that our tax money is going to be spent for our benefit. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita.
Appreciate it. Please.
Hi. Jean Green.
Good afternoon, Ms. Green.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Fritz for, at the last meeting, I read the minutes, for acknowledging that there are citizens who are concerned about the airport expansion. And I did put a little packet together for you with some information. First of all, the map of the area of potential effects from the environmental impact statement. It includes in the entire Enchanted Circle. It includes about half of the Rio Grande del Norte, the entire Pueblo, mostly Wheeler Peak Wilderness, part of Ladder Peak Wilderness, mostly national forest. So there's the map. Then there's a fact sheet that I'll talk about in a minute. Then there's the resolution that was passed, a resolution of the governing body of the Town of Taos adamantly opposing the United States Air Force establishing a low-altitude tactical navigation training area in northern New Mexico. This was passed by the former council, and I hope that you will honor it. It was signed by Rudy Abeyta, Eugene Sanchez, Amy Quintana, and Michael Silva. Then there's an explanation about firefighting planes, why they do not need a longer airstrip. Then there's a Taos article from the Taos News in February 2013 about the fact that there will be very little economic boost to Taos from airport expansion. And the Albuquerque Sunport braces for the impact. Albuquerque Airport is losing money and flights, so expanding our airport doesn't make a whole lot of sense here unless it's for the military. And the military does have their plans here, and we've seen them. We've seen Osprey in the gorge and flying in circles around the area. They're not supposed to fly right over Taos town, but they've been in the canyon. They're out there, but this new expansion will make it all the more easy for them to land and do their little tactical trainings. And I've talked to friends who've seen the military. A friend was over at Wild Rivers. She'd taken some kids to hike and feed the fish, and there was a tactical unit there. She said there were like 50 soldiers there with AK-47s, and they were in the trees, and they were very intimidating. And this sort of thing is happening, and it's happening in Cibola National Forest. And in fact, they just passed in the Armed Services Committee an amendment to a bill that said that our public lands, their greatest priority is for national security. Well, that's not what our public lands were put aside for. And so I'm asking you to reconsider this. Since you had an ultimatum at your first meeting to pass this right now or lose the money. You haven't had time to consider all the impacts. And there are many citizens that are concerned about this. So I hope that you will take the time to read through my packet and reconsider this project. I just want to say one more thing about, I saw on the menu about Waste Management of New Mexico to accept sludge from the Taos Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. I hope that you do not approve this tonight because what you really need to do is look into composting. They did not compost this correctly. Other towns do it correctly. Many other towns do this correctly. So if you can do it correctly, why not do that instead of putting it into the landfill, which is going to eventually leak. Those plastic liners are eventually going to leak. You cannot deny that. So please think about this before and do some research before you approve that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
And I just want to make a statement. I think that, we just a few minutes ago in the opening prayer, we applauded our veterans for protecting us and for making us a land of the free, and they put their life on the line, and everybody that came up here today knocked our veterans. And it's appalling to me that our veterans are not put on a pedestal and really applauded for the work they did for us here in our country to give us the freedom of speech and the freedom to serve. And I just want to make that statement. It's not on you. It's just that everybody that came up here made that statement.
No, there's nothing
just
against...
recently, over the weekend, we upheld, and I don't want to get in a shouting match with anybody. It just really touched my heart, because, I mean, we just had flags flying all around our town, all around. In Cuesta, we had the memorial with 1,000 flags out there. And yet, we can't come together and say our veterans did something good. Let's not pick on our veterans. If
I'm
there's
sorry
another issue...
if you misunderstood.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone here does not appreciate our veterans. We just don't want planes flying over our homes and over our forests at 200 feet.
Right.
We don't have to. They have half of New Mexico already in their airspace.
Right.
So please don't
and
put words in our mouths.
We'll uphold that. There is a resolution, and we will uphold that. But again, let's not pick on our veterans. I think our veterans are so important. 45% of the veterans of New Mexico were from the Taos County area. So again, I don't want to get into an argument. Okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
veterans were not
Appreciate it.
mentioned. I'm sorry that you got that impression.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bellis.
I know, I'm really curious as to why everybody keeps insisting there's a conspiracy to make us a military airport. There's Google it. There's 19,700 airports in the U.S. 5,170 of those actually are open to the public, with only 503 of those carrying any commercial service. Only 17 of the general aviation airports in the United States are designed to handle military traffic. Why would the military, first of all of you've been old enough to live through what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere else, okay, the Iraqi freedom, Kuwait. It took 6 months before we landed a single aircraft in the Mideast, because they will not land an aircraft in adverse weather and conditions. They're so specialized, and it takes a crew of 13 people to maintain them, that they have to build these huge hangars for those aircraft. The investment to build a single hangar for a C-130 and the fuel dump for it would exceed the entire value that we have ever put in or plan to put into the airport. So it makes no sense for them to come here and put in that kind of money when they've already got airports. They could go to Roswell, they could go to Waco. All of the U.S. military airports are in all-weather terrain, which means, and we're horrible for that. We're above 7,000 feet, which means the air is too thin to support fixed-wing aircraft with heavy loads. Our tarmac is too thin. It would stick in the pavement in July. They'd have to de-ice the runway. And it just, we have sandstorms and dust storms, which is, if you've read anything about the aircraft they had in the Middle East, every time they had a dust storm, they had to change the blades, the rotors on and clean the jet engines out before they could fly them. This would be the worst possible conditions to put a military base. And there's absolutely no one up here, no one from the prior administration, there's no documentation, because you've all been asking for it, that there's ever been a phone call, a text, a conversation with any military agency or any desire of them to ever use this airport. This is strictly for, if you want to know what it's for, okay, it's very simple. It is public safety. The legislature gave $50,000 so that we could put a hangar on the airport And yes, it's connected to the Air Force. It's the Civil Air Patrol so that they can give us a former aircraft from the U.S. Air Force to do search and rescue and to do aerial photography, which we've asked for because we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars photographing for the assessor's office, for the electric utilities, for the fire service, and everybody else. And it's to spot people now that we have this huge national monument that may get lost. So it's safety, search, and rescue, and to increase for the pilots. And yes, if we were building military aircraft, we wouldn't be shortening runways. We'd be lengthening runways and adding additional pavement. But we're not doing that. I mean, if anybody honestly has a single shred of evidence, a conversation with a governmental entity, with any credible source, please come forward, because I think we'd like to know about it. If we're being used, we'd like to know. But from an aviation standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense for them to want to be here.
And thank you, Mr. Bellis. And again, maybe we can have a public forum or a public, so that we can get the people opposing that and people that are for it, and we can invite the people from the feds here, people from the Air Force, maybe people, and address some of your concerns or some of your questions, and maybe we can put those, maybe, there's some answers to them. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, I wasn't planning on speaking. I was sitting in the audience. My name's Stephen Ortiz. I have property in Taos, El Prado, and up in the Ski Valley. And to me, the airport expansion is essential, and I am aghast at people that think they can bring the drawbridge up behind them and that we're doing fine as a community. It's very hard for visitors to get to us here, and to give people options where it's easier to visit us. And the public safety thing, I wasn't prepared to speak, but I haven't heard anybody talking about air ambulances. If any of the speakers needed to be medevaced, I know they would appreciate having a working airport where they could have an air ambulance get them to the care that they need. And this military thing is just a red herring. I've flown on C-130s. I was in the military. They can land on unapproved runways. They can land on dirt runways. I was actually dumping at the dump from a development project that I was doing, and they were doing touch and go landings, simulated landings over the dump. I mean, I think that our military people need to have places to train so that they're proficient in the jobs that they do. And they're the ones on the ramparts that do defend our freedoms, so that people can hold these wild notions that they have, that these conspiracies and things, but they do keep us free. And I'm sure there weren't 50 people out there with AK-47s, because we don't carry AK-47s in our military. But I don't mean to be attacking anybody. I'm not a politician, but I'm sitting here in the audience listening, and we really do need the airport expansion. I have friends that don't want to drive 3 hours before coming to visit us. I've done way too many trips up to Denver to get a good airport connection. Los Alamos has a satellite flight system going now down to Albuquerque, and I don't know how much it is, but I think it's about $39. And that would be great. And we need to support things that connect our community and not cut us off from the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. And Mr. Mayor, I would like to support you in your idea of having a public forum where the community can come together, perhaps here in these chambers, where we can discuss in relaxed fashion and get all of the facts, and perhaps dispel those issues that are not facts. So I'm supportive of that. Thank you for suggesting it.
Thank you. Melissa?
And I haven't been to see everyone since you got elected, but I'm glad you're all here. I'm here to address the sewage sludge issue about dumping it in the landfill, and I made some calls about that to Santa Fe and to the New Mexico Environmental Department, and absolutely there's ways to compost that material. It's really valuable fertilizer. It only needs to be done right. And in Santa Fe, they're doing it themselves, you know what I mean? So it can be done, and it's being done locally. And it just seems silly to fill up the landfill with sewage sludge when it can be used to make a nutrient to grow food on and stuff like that.
And Melissa, just for your information, and I think somebody else brought this up, this is actually, we're transporting it to Rio Rancho.
I understand that. I understand
and they're
that.
utilizing it over
I
there.
know, and my point is that instead of dumping it into the landfill, now why not create a compost yard right on the landfill site? And things like wood chips from your sawmill and the other stuff that they're processing for composting there, the stuff that they're mulching up, that can all be mixed up with that material and make a really rich compost. And that's just traditionally the way that we use waste material, whether it's from animals or people or animals too. I know it's the same thing, really, you know what I mean? But nobody wants to touch that. But it's the truth that the better way to take care of this waste is to compost it, and you don't have to I mean, you will have to make an initial investment, just like, but instead of paying, I think it said, is it $62,000 a year or something? For that amount, you could, in 1 year, build a really high state-of-the-art composting system there, and then for years and years ahead, we'll be nourishing the land. Everybody worries about the water and the food and all that, and that's exactly what we need to do, is take care of the land and our resources. And, you know, the same thing with that free box and stuff, that was a couple of years ago. They closed that down, but really didn't make any financial impact on the town. It was a people's resource, but you know, that could be reset up again somehow with a different structure, and I'd like to see that happen too. I'm concerned about the waste of resources here. You know, there's so many things, from this excrement to the clothes and you know, things we are recycling now, but they're really, that's the wave of the future, is to start looking at those materials and saying, what can we do with this stuff, instead of just fill up the landfill with it, you know what I mean? And so, and in fact, that was one concern, is that years ago, and I think it was 2005 or 2006, I went to Bobby Gonzalez and Carlos Cisneros, and with the county we came up with this baling machine that was going to bale the clothing and stuff. Now, you know, that's just been sitting there unused for all these years, because nobody has been able to think about how to set this up and have the money and the capital to just invest a little bit into some kind of a local resource thing where people could benefit in the community here with jobs and, like I said, maybe to take care of some of these resources instead of just throw them in the dump, you know. And I know now the CIB actually just took away part of my job by getting themselves a container truck, and they're going to send that all that stuff to Dallas instead of what I was doing, sending it to Albuquerque to a place called Clothes Helping Kids. And, you know, it'd be nice to keep the materials and the resources in New Mexico even, and, you know, let the people in Taos benefit from some of that stuff too. So, all I can say is I'm hoping that we can push this recycling direction a little bit, and that, you know, nobody hastily goes around dumping that stuff into the landfill at this point. You know, there's a time to study these options. I did talk to that guy at NMED. I can't think of his name right now, actually. I should have been prepared with that, but he did tell me, because I said, well, you know, there are better options than dumping it in the landfill, and he totally agreed that the composting was a viable solution, and that, as I said, in the community right south of us in Santa Fe, where they're also banning the plastic bag now and having people bring their recycling shopping bags and stuff, then maybe there's a chance, you know what I mean? But you have to start thinking progressively on how we're going to deal with this stuff, and not just shove it all in the hole and bury it and forget about it, you know, because all this stuff is, like I said, valuable resources that we should be taken care of in a good way. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Melissa, and we're going to probably, you know, tap into some of your institutional knowledge as we get moving forward with this. This is an initiative that Mr. Hahn and Judy Cantu and myself and the other councilors are continuing to push forward with. You know, a few years ago, the town was generous enough to donate 10 acres to the county, because the county had was applying for a grant to set up a recycle center.
Exactly.
And basically because of the, I guess I want to say the economy, the way it crashed, and there wasn't any federal funds, any state funding to continue that avenue, the county actually had to send that grant money back because there wasn't enough to continue forward. But the town still has that 10 acres that are willing to put up to continue to move in this initiative. And now that the economy is getting better and there's some monies out there, we will continue to look for those monies to carry through with these initiatives that we promised we would. So,
Okay, I
thank
hope
you.
so. Thank you very much. Okay. Have a
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
Anybody else? Please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Barrone, council members. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I had not planned to speak this evening, but in listening to some of the concerns in regards to the airport expansion, I felt compelled to.
Can you state your name, please?
I'm sorry, I apologize. My name is Daniel Williams. Most of you that I know, many of the people in this room, primarily as a teacher. I've taught for many years. What most people don't know is I'm also a retired Air Force officer. 20 years in the Air Guard. I don't look like it now because I'm primarily an actor at the moment. But as we look at it, some years ago we had RBTI, Realistic Bomber Training Initiative, and the town of Taos, the county, the Pueblo, many individuals opposed that, including myself. I was very outspoken against it, not because I was opposed to the training, but because of the routes that it involved. At that time, this is quite some years ago, it was primarily B-52 bombers. There were B-1s also, as I recall, and some tanker aircraft. There have been some other things that have come up since. I'm sorry, I don't have all the facts in front of me because, again, I had not planned to speak. But I would like to point out, I see it very, very much as a safety issue, and I personally do encourage the town to support the airport expansion. It does open the possibility for larger aircraft. In terms of C-130s, when I was enlisted, I was a C-130 loadmaster with 1,200 flight hours over a period of about 7 years. It's true that 130s can land on unimproved runways, including dirt runways. I do not believe that they were doing touch and goes at the dump. They were probably doing simulated landings where they come over, stay a certain distance off the ground, and continue on versus ever touching down. What it opens the door for, though, with the expansion, is planes that can come on if we had a true disaster. And a lot of what we did with the Guard, Hurricane Iniki, 1992, September 11th of 1992, was when it hit the island of Hurricane Iniki hit the island of Kauai, $1.8 billion on a little island 30 miles in diameter. The disaster response from the military and from civilian sectors was huge. This would help open the doors for us to get the kind of emergency relief that we needed, regardless of whether the planes were military or whether they were civilian. Another thing from an economic standpoint, people can say, oh, well, it's not going to make money because it's not convenient to fly in and out of here. What it would also potentially do is open the door for the film industry to come in. That is huge for New Mexico with the tax incentives. Right now, I can tell you as an actor, I'm driving weekly to Santa Fe and Albuquerque because that's where the film work is. They're in Las Cruces. Taos could be a part of that. It could be absolutely huge for the economy, potentially. In regards to, I can't think of anything that would really be a negative having it here personally. I believe it would increase safety rather than reducing it. Longer runways, if you've got a plane that's got an emergency, they've got more distance to land, it can make the difference in them being able to land safely. I have a question. If in fact the primary small plane runway is being reduced in size, are those planes not going to be allowed to use a longer runway? And that's a question. I don't know the answer to that, but it seems to me that if it's a safety issue, that's certainly one that could be looked at. So, and certainly the CAV, excuse me, not CAV, but the Civil Air Patrol, CAP, yes, it's part of the Air Force, but it's entirely search and rescue, just as you were saying, even though they wear the uniforms. So I encourage you to support the expansion. I believe it would totally benefit Taos, economically, safety-wise, and I totally agree that there's absolutely no reason for the military to create a significant presence here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Sanchez? Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm not here to talk about the airport. And I just want to make a comment about what happened with the town of Taos around, I'm going to guess 2008 maybe, or even in 6. They spent over $500,000 building a compost pad out at the sewer plant. And the town received so many complaints by the people that live out there because of the smell. And that is what got the town to start taking this sludge back to Rio Rancho. And even before that, I believe under the administration of former Mayor Peralta, they built a plant down there to convert the sludge into fertilizer, which they were able to bag, and that was a complete failure. Not that it wasn't a good idea, but people just didn't care about it. And the idea with the compost that was built back around 2006 or whatever was they would have enough fertilizer so that anybody in Taos who wanted to go out and take it by the truckload were free to do it. But it was forced to be closed down because of the odor. And, you know, if you build a house by a sewer plant, then it's going to smell. You've got to expect that kind of stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is I know that Councilman Fritz Hahn has been working on various committees and doing so much research that, quite frankly, Mr. Hahn, I'm afraid you're going to burn out way before your time. There is a committee that I really believe you should have been appointed to, because there's nobody in this town, I'm going to guess, I'm going to say it, knows about the hospital as much as you do, the faults that it has, and the finances and the records that they would not provide you because you have so many questions, that it baffles me why this council didn't appoint Mr. Hahn to the Hospital Advisory Board. I have witnessed some of the actions that took place in the past many years at the hospital, with the hospital board, and I saw it as nothing more than a rubber stamp. And that's one of the problems we have with this hospital right now. And I'm not afraid to tell you that in the month of December of this last year, I had some of the worst medical attention, not from the doctors, but from the staff in general, because they couldn't get from one room to the next. There was so much demand, and they had already closed down like 30 hospital rooms. We've got a serious problem out there, and I think it is with administration and the way they're spending this money. So I'm very sorry, Mr. Hahn, that you weren't appointed to the hospital board. Now I see here, and I have a question on this audit committee that you have. What is the purpose of this audit, if I'm asking you?
You want to address that, Mr.
I will defer to our finance director, Marietta Fembro, and also Councilman Peralta is on it. I've attended a number of them, and I think it's a great idea to look at the deficiencies identified by the auditors and to anticipate some that might arise, and to have independent third-party CPAs and accountants from outside the town that have no financial vested interest to look at our procedures, show where we might anticipate problems, and to advise us on how to resolve those problems.
All right, it's nothing like a forensic audit, just sort of an operational audit. If you're going to have an audit, it's not going to be on what is going on presently with our new government. Wouldn't it be an audit of what's been going on in the past? And don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, Marietta. And the reason I bring this up is if it's going to be an independent audit, I don't think anybody from town government ought to be involved. I think that this should be an audit that is performed by independent people outside of the town of Taos.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sanchez, it's not an audit per se, it's just a committee, like Manager Bella said, to go over the actual audit that we did do and clear up whatever findings may be or have recommendations to the town. And so we established it according to GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, recommendations on how to put an audit committee together. And it's more an oversight to help out, like just to help and see what we're doing and things that we can do better as the town and the department itself. So it's...
And the consultants that you're bringing in?
They're not consultants, they're actually members from the community. So we
Well,
have...
I know they are.
Yeah, they're members from the community, so we've selected them. We've already had several meetings on this audit committee. We're just reestablishing, reappointing these members.
Councilor Peralta?
Mr. Sanchez, the purpose of this committee is not to audit. We don't do any auditing. What we look at is the findings of the audit and try to see if there are recommendations that we can make to the staff to do a better job of adhering to the audit standards that are provided by auditors. The reason for this committee is that auditors cannot recommend changes to operations within the organization they're auditing.
Yes.
So they are asking for a committee within the institution that has outside and inside people to work, and non-staff to help staff look at the findings in the audit, to look at areas that might be improved, and also to look at areas in the future that might be questionable in future audits.
Is there a possibility, and I'm just asking, if there couldn't be an independent public member as part of this committee?
There are two.
There's two.
Well, one is a CPA.
Right.
And
Yes.
I think he's a good man.
And the other one is Michelle Grego. She works at New Mexico Federal Credit Union.
Are these, okay, Michelle is not going to be paid for this?
Nobody's paid. It's volunteer work for them.
All right.
We have one meeting every month for an hour or
Okay.
longer.
You've answered my question. Thank you for allowing me to come up here and make my comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to compliment Councilman Peralta. If he was not on it by virtue of the fact of being a councilman, I think he would still be an excellent addition because he provides a historical perspective to what the town has done over the years, so that we know what's been tried and what hasn't worked, and brings a real depth of knowledge to problems that unfortunately in government tend to be recurring, and helps us find ongoing solutions to those.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please. And just start with your name for the record.
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Town Manager, and council members. My name is John Ablin, and I own the Dreamcatcher Bed and Breakfast. I'm also the president of the Taos County Lodgers Association, and we own the Taos.org. And we spend over $150,000 a year promoting Taos, presenting events and all of its participants in a cohesive manner. And this helps business and nonprofits to be able to advertise to potential tourists. In the May 8th minutes, under Point F, Lodgers Tax, Mr. Bellis discussed reinstituting a marketing tourism director. Our position has been that there has been a void in this area, so we are very supportive of taking this position. Further on in the next paragraph, Mr. Bellis' statement of that the website, Taos.org, was initially paid and continues to be paid with Lodgers tax funds is basically inaccurate. We are, what I use the term, the fulfillment arm of the town's promotion through its agency. But we have never asked for payment for our work from the town. We do this voluntarily. We have, the organization has been around for over 20 years, and we believe that running a dynamic website, which we have, is not a cheap endeavor, as it needs skilled professionals and expenses for hosting the website, to just name a few of the cost items that we incur. We raise money through advertising, there's no doubt about that. And even though we are a for-profit organization, because we do not fit exactly under a not-for-profit, we do not have any paid staff, with the exception of a part-time contract person for sales, and our agency, which is web design. We have other agencies involved, but they're the principal ones. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify some of those elements. The board is meeting with Mr. Bellis shortly, and we are looking forward to a further enrichment between the town and TCLA. And we believe that there is a healthy dialogue going on, and there will continue to be one going on. And I just wanted to thank you all for recognizing the efforts related to advertising and promoting and marketing the town of Taos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
John, I want to thank you, and if it's all right, Mr. Mayor, I just, so for a non-IT person like myself, what is it that Taos.org does in a sentence?
We are a website that organizes information related to the town of Taos, that puts it in a way so that it promotes the town, so that if tourists are looking for places to go, they will see that they will have an incredible experience coming to Taos.
Thank you, John. And what does it cost the taxpayers, in a sentence?
The taxpayers?
Yes.
You mean?
Or the town coffers. What does the town pay for this service?
Well, the town does advertise on Taos.org, and that bill is $2,600. That's it.
Per year?
Well, every year we suggest that you advertise, because we think it's appropriate.
So it's a flat fee for $2,600 a year, John?
We have different ways of advertising. That's the type of advertising that the town does.
And then my last question, thank you for your patience. And John, thank you for your direct answers. I appreciate that. Last weekend, I think the Lilac Festival was going on, and I got an irate person calling me, asking me why the Lilac Festival was not all over Taos.org. And you know, John, embarrassingly, I had to tell this constituent, the citizen, I never heard of Taos.org. Now, perhaps you told me about it and it went in one ear and out the other, but so for someone holding events that the town and county and community at large need to know about, how do we get to you? How do we advertise? Do we talk to Mr. Bellis and then he gets the word to you, or do we call you directly? And is that part of our town $2,600 per year? How do we do that?
Well, you asked several questions. Let me answer the last one first.
Okay, sorry, John.
No, the $2,600 has nothing to do with that element of communication between the town and the TCLA, Taos County Lodgers Association. If I understood your question correctly, they asked how come Taos.org is not promoting the Lilac Festival?
Did not.
Well, then they were not looking at Taos.org. The very front page of it had a very significant element of the Lilac Festival, and there were items in there that if you clicked on, then they went and they had pictures, they had identified the events. It was very well covered. And this is a good example of the events that we get engaged with. We know that the Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Hamilton are I would call them the two primary people responsible for the development of the Lilac Festival. And because they know about Taos.org, because we are involved in other aspects of the community, they approached us to want to do a promotion. And so for that element of it, there is no charge. If somebody in the Lilac Festival had a booth or had a business that they wanted to advertise, then we charge for that advertising. But in terms of promoting an event or something, there is no charge that Taos.org has. And you would not go to Mr. Bellis. You should go to Mr. Bellis if you would like to, that's all right. But no, we are an independent, private organization that's been around for 20 years. And I know there are certain elements of the town that probably would never even recognize or know about Taos.org. This is one thing that we've recognized in the last couple of board members. We thought, we've got to improve our image. We have to let people know who we are.
So we can simply Google Taos.org and thereby set up communication with you regarding an event.
There is a place on the front page that says contact us. I think that's the terminology or something like that. And that then gets created as an email, and we then go forward with it. Now, any of these large events like the Lilac Festival, the Solar Fest, Dennis Hopper Days, when we hear something about this from any board member or anybody associated, what we do then is if we do not have a direct contact, then we go and try to find out who is in charge, and we present to them, here are the things that we can do for you, but you have to give us information. And if you do, it's on our website.
In defense of the Lilac Festival, it could be very, I could have misconstrued that, John, so I don't want to set them up as
it's all right.
being derelict, but it was a complaint coming in last weekend, and so I think I'm presenting it correctly, but I may not be.
Councilman Hahn, I received the same email from probably the same person as you, and at last week's Tuesday morning marketing meeting, that's the first thing I asked Janet Webb about was the Lilac, and she assured me that it absolutely was on there. In fact, she had just taken it off that morning.
Yeah, once the promotion is over with, we always have something new coming up, so we always are filling in the space.
John, thank you for your efforts.
My pleasure.
You. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and move on our agenda. Mr. Bellis and Renee, I just want to make a request that from now on, if we will move all our presentations ahead of our citizens forum so that we can get through our presentations before we hit our citizens forums, because I know that a lot of them come for a specific reason, and we just want to get those addressed before if we would. Thank you. So under presentations, we'll go on to number 8, letter A, Community Against Violence. Ms. Malinda Williams, thank you for being here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm Malinda Williams. I work at the Community Against Violence, and I have had the pleasure of working there for the last 20-plus years, and have really enjoyed the partnership that we've been able to have with the Town of Taos as well as the county. And I have to also thank the Village of Cuesta and some of the other local governments, because it's a partnership that we really look at this as the way of providing the services that our constituents need. The survivors of domestic and sexual violence are withstanding some horrific scenarios in their own lives, and they come to us when they're at the very end of being able to look at their life in any way, shape, or form with any hope whatsoever. And I have to commend all of you that I know many of you are personally supporters of the Community Against Violence, and I know professionally that you have given either of your own personal in-kind resources from your businesses and from your personal pockets, and those of your neighbors, friends, and families. Many of you may not even realize how many of your neighbors and your friends and families have come through our doors looking for help. And of the adult women, men, and the children that we serve, the elderly, the victims of child abuse, all of them depend on a very strong partnership with our local government and individual community leaders, our businesses, and our families. So during this period of time, this is our 36th year of providing services, and it's been with the town's support in getting the facilities for all of the services that are provided, including a 26-bed shelter, emergency and transitional on-site, transitioning to be a scattered site leasing program for families who are kind of graduating from the emergency shelter system. They're getting counseling for adults and children, parenting support. They're getting also crisis intervention 24 hours a day with a hotline that's answered by staff who are very well trained. And of those, and some of the documents that we've sent out to you all, is that we didn't have it broken out, but last year our children's forensic unit, the safe room, it's called Taos Children's Safe Room, provided services to 131 cases of child abuse that were being coordinated with the local law enforcement and child protective services, as well as the Pueblo Social Services. And those kids immediately get information and contact to medical services as well as counseling free of charge, and help providing their non-offending caretakers the assistance they need to make sure that those children are safe, and to hopefully, like we all hope, that child abuse will end. And one of the things I'm going to ask from the town today is a further in-kind partnership where CAV would be offering training to your staff who work with children at the Taos Youth and Family Center, and all to our listening folks. If you have a business that works with children, CAV is able to provide 7 businesses with training this year to end child abuse and to help strengthen their own policies to help make sure that the children in their care are protected. Because during those 36 years we've been here, we've been going into the schools and educating children how not to be abused, how to protect themselves. And as I was talking to the mayor recently, is that children don't have the power to stop being abused. The adults have the power to stop abusing them and to also make sure that the children are not being abused by others. And I am asking that you all consider letting us enter a partnership with your town Youth and Family Center and the adults who work there. So kind of keep that in your minds while I go on about the rest of the services. The prevention program has been recognized as the state of New Mexico's technical assistance providers contracted through the Department of Health 2 years in a row for the state of New Mexico prevention programs. That is a feather in the cap of all of the leaders of the town and the county, and letting you know that we are doing solid, good services here. The Transitional Shelter Program has just been awarded at a state New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness and Mortgage Finance Authority and HUD conference that's held biannually. And we were awarded the Innovation Program of the Year, and I wanted you all to know about that and to know that we couldn't do that without a partnership with the town to establish the emergency and transitional shelter that currently exists today. It was afforded by a HUD grant that was one of, I think, 16 in the nation at the time. And at that point in time, former Mayor Peralta was the mayor, and it was a partnership of this council and mayor writing a grant with a nonprofit and getting the CDBG funding and capital outlay funds to establish an existing shelter where people could go when they were fleeing with nothing but the clothes on their back. And to this day, our caseload's averaging about 120 a month of people, families that we're serving, and also that comes close to about 570 people a year that are unduplicated, not seen before. And I want you all to know how very, very important these services are. Is that the program began because there were murders in this town that were extremely horrendous, and they were completely preventable. Domestic violence doesn't have to ruin people's lives. We don't have to raise up children believing that it's okay. You all are helping us change that, and I have to say that this is one of the most important things that I think that I could ever be doing, and I really enjoy the work that the Community Against Violence staff does, and the volunteers and the board. Of a $1.5 million budget, we're asking that you consider the in-kind match from the town for the contract of services to be increased to $46,000 a year. It's not a huge percentage. I know it's probably not money that anyone has laying in their couch cushions, and we want you to consider to increase the amount that has been the contracted service provision from the town during the last, I think, 5 years. If you have questions about individual services, I'd be happy to answer that. And those of you who have not been to CAV for a tour, I would welcome the opportunity to share with you what your neighbors are doing to help change the community from an unsafe one for those families and children to a safer one. Do you have any questions?
Councilor? None? Thank you, Malinda, for all the work.
Thank you, Malinda.
And your
Appreciate
staff.
it.
Thank
and
you.
One of the things I would recommend to any of the council members and the mayor, if you have not taken a tour of the facility and seen the project over there, it's really, really worthwhile to do that and understand the importance of what CAV does for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think your services are crucial as being a woman, you know, and whether it was myself or my friends have used your services. They're invaluable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And all of you mark down your calendars. I get a pitch for October 2nd is the annual radiothon. So I hope I get to contact each of you individually, but I'd like to see you going and speaking up to your neighbors about what's important in your community. Not just CAV, but CAV is one very important one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malinda.
And Mr. Bellis, you know, I know that in our new budget cycle, there's dollars that are being set aside for this particular type of thing. Is there going to be a time when the number of, I guess, individuals or entities come forward that you will contact them and give them a criteria list, and then will they'll be ranked and rated, or how would that process?
Yes, Mayor, we were going to cover that a little later in the budget, but the idea is that since the requests always exceed the amount of funds available, that a little different structure be taken, and that is think of it as like CDBG block grant, where an amount is appropriated by the council in the budget. A RFP is put out publicly to give everyone a fair chance. There are organizations that always come before the governing bodies after the deadlines pass, and sometimes they're very worthy causes. So this would put the burden on us to get the information out publicly to all the organizations in the community. There will be some ranking criteria. You as the council will help with setting up that ranking as to how the scoring system will be. And it may be that not all the organizations can be funded, but much like you would put together a ICIP, you fund the top ranked ones, and as money becomes available, you can always elect to put more money into that fund and fund additional proposals as they come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bellis. So we'll go ahead and go on to item B, Taos Children's Theater. Ms. Karen Thibodeau.
Thank you, Council and Mr. Mayor, for having us here. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are some of our wonderful performers and actors who will be seen performing at the TCA this summer in The Hobbit. They've often been with the Children's Theater for a couple of years, and we're happy to say that a number of our former members are going on to the Santa Fe School of Performing Arts. So at this time, they would just like to tell you their name and the school they're from, and we also have a 4-minute DVD to show you for your entertainment of The Frog Princess, which will inform you in detail about the program. So just briefly, I'll let these wonderful young people greet you.
Thank you.
I'm Maxwell Blocker, and I'm from Taos Middle School, and I'm 12.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm Rose Osborne, and I go to Enos Garcia, and I'm 10. Soy Rose Osborne y voy a la escuela de Enos Garcia Elementary y soy 10 años.
Ryan Cox, Taos Charter School, 12 years old.
Lara Cox, Taos Charter School. I am 9 years old.
I'm 14 and my name is Malinda Williams, and I just graduated 8th grade from Taos Middle School, and next year I will be attending high school for the first year at New Mexico School of the Arts down in Santa Fe.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hannah O'Brien Ishikawa. I finished 4th grade at TISA, and I'm going to go to Taos Academy for 5th grade, and I am 9 years old.
Thank you.
I'm Victoria. I'm Victoria Ortiz. I'm a college student, and I've been helping out with assistant directing for several years now.
She's our favorite. And so is Kim Grant.
I'm Kim Grant, and I've been helping with the Taos Children's Theater. I'm also a substitute teacher in Taos.
So we have a wonderful staff, which makes the whole program possible. And we have, for a number of years, had the support of the town with just a small grant, but it's really meaningful, and we encourage you to consider it again this year and help this program continue. We also offer an after-school bilingual program during the school year, and the kids perform in Spanish and English. So now we would like to share the DVD with you, and then if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take your questions. But before we begin, Maxwell has a certain special paragraph which she wrote to share with you.
My first encounter with Karen Thibodeau was last summer when I was in Alice in Wonderland. It was really hard work, but it was really fun. And I was a caterpillar and Alice's sister, Elspeth. And since Tuesday, the dance instructor from Taos Youth Ballet taught us our dances. I later went to join Taos Youth Ballet, and I'm in modern and ballet, and I was in the Jungle Book, and I was a monkey and a parakeet. That was also really fun. And I was also in The Day It Snowed Tortillas, and I was one of the eldest children. That was fun too. And I remember when I first started, I was really shy and I didn't have many friends, but now I have a large array of great friends that I can talk to, and I'm more open now, and that's because of Taos Children's Theater. That's it.
Thank you, Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank all of you guys for coming forward. And
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
please.
Karen, I just wanted to ask you, what's the length of your summer program, and how many children do you have participating?
We usually work with a cast of 35, and plus some adults who act as mentors for the young actors. And then we are performing this summer for all the summer school students. They're going to walk over to the TCA. We also air the program on the local Cablevision so that we reach an audience of approximately 65, potentially 6,500. And our program in the summer goes on for 5 or 6 weeks. And it's an intensive program. The students are usually involved in theater and dance rehearsals from 9:30 until 3 in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, thank you. And young men and women, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Maxwell, you forgot to mention you were also a mariachi.
So were you going to play this now, Karen?
Yeah, it's all set up and it should be ready to roll.
Tackler, tackler, shooby-dooba, tackler, tackler, shooby-dooba, oh, rare, a beautiful prize. And I'll transform your pretty eyes. May your skin stay green.
The Frog Princess, the summer production for Taos Children's Theater, attracted a talented cast of 25 actors ages 3 through 17, plus 5 talented adults. Set in Russia, we had the generous support of Randy Graythorne Esquire III, Costumes Limited, and Taos Community Auditorium, moving costumes toward a fantastic display. The Frog Princess depicts the magical tale of Prince Sergei, who marries a frog only to discover she's really Princess Vasilisa. Then he journeys far to break the evil spell of the wizard Koshchei. Bringing the heart and soul of Russia, the talented group Ragada arrived from Albuquerque, singing in Russian in 4-part harmony. Bringing in the lyrical character of Russian dance, Amber Vasquez of Taos Youth Ballet choreographed beautiful moments of dance performed by everyone from 3 on up.
True love, my friends, will always win out.
She said, I'm gonna kiss you, I'm gonna kiss you.
Taos artist Maya Torres created a fantastical denouement with her shadow puppet sequence in which all of nature unites to help Prince Sergei. Set designs were drawn from the fabulous Russian clay paintings of Zora Stova. In The Frog Princess, witch Baba Yaga does a good turn and helps Prince Sergei.
And the cunning of a wolf, and the cleverness of a rabbit, and you need a frog.
Actor Keegan Edwards says, I enjoy acting because it always makes me happy. I like playing Sergei because he is so much like me.
We'll win out over that old Koshchei. You'll just win out and smash him.
We performed 5 times for school groups and the community at the Taos Art Plaza. Taos Pueblo Day School, the Discovery Program, and Anansi Charter School all attended our sold-out matinee. Children, Youth and Families Department, Boys and Girls Club, CAV, Amigos Unidos all attended other performances. The final show aired on cable TV, bringing our potential viewing audience to 6,500. Thanks to 35 Taos businesses, the Optimists, McCune Foundation, New Mexico Arts, Harris Foundation, and the Town of Taos, First Community Bank, and Taos Mountain Casino. The production thrilled the hearts of young and old and created memories that will live on and on and on.
Thank you so much. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And Mr. Mr. Bellis, if, I don't know if we're creating the list so that as there's presentations made that we then in turn contact them and then the criteria is.
Yes, we are, Mayor, and we've already met and I've seen the presentation. I think it's fantastic if we're going to be an arts community. This is the sort of thing, particularly when the director tells me about how many kids have gone on to arts academies and really taken the great step to build careers out of your being involved here locally.
And I know the work it takes, and I applaud every single one of you. One time I had the opportunity to play Thaddeus in an Easter pageant, and I'll tell you what, it was, the work that it takes and the amount of time that it takes to, learn your lines and really put production on. I really thank you. I think all the counselors here need to take that opportunity to to be part of one of these productions. So.
That would be fabulous.
Thank you.
I see some very talented people there.
Maybe a future grooming ground for elected officials.
Yeah.
I did enough acting in high school and grade school, and I'm not an actor.
You have a very wonderful public presence, though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And thank all of the...
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and move on in our agenda. The next item, we'll have 3 separate items, A, B, and C, and what we're going to do is we have a public hearing. So we're going to open the public hearing, and the first item, and after the A is reviewed, then we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll hear a motion, and if there's a motion that's going to be passed, and then we'll open a public hearing again for item B, and then we'll take it the same way in item C. So the first one is Stray Cats 2 at Don Fernando liquor license application. Please. And good evening, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Barrone and the council, for giving me the opportunity for this hearing for my beer and wine license.
So Mr. Bellis or Jake, we have...
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, what I'd suggest is go ahead and open the public hearing, and then
I did.
You can swear Ms. Garrett in.
Okay.
And then she can proceed. Ms. Garrett, you should know that this is a public hearing, that members of the public will be invited to either comment, ask questions, oppose, or approve of your application. You may be cross-examined, and that we make every effort to provide you due process and the rest of the community due process in these matters.
Thank you.
So again, we'll open this public hearing. If you would like to swear her in.
Please state your name for the record.
Deborah Garrett.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth?
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor and council members, it should just be noted that in your agenda packet are select pages from the beer and wine license application. I believe Ms. Garrett is the managing member of the LLC on whose behalf this application has been brought. But Ms. Garrett, I would ask you maybe to explain the premises, who you are, what the nature of your entity is, and essentially why you're before the council today.
Okay. My name is Deborah Garrett. I'm the owner of Hotel Don Fernando. We have recently opened the restaurant as Stray Cats. We are a full-service hotel, complete with an indoor pool and hot tub, which we recently got going again. My hotel caters to everyone from the surrounding area to Albuquerque and throughout the states. I want to provide them with beer and wine, along with food in our menu at the Stray Cats. I want to be able to increase revenue in that way, and therefore increase revenue for the city of Taos as well, with gross revenue tax. And I want to do my best to make a nice place for our visitors to come and visit Taos at the Hotel Don Fernando. I am, my LLC is Deborah Riley Garrett LLC, in other words, DRG LLC. I am the managing person for that LLC. I'm pretty responsible. I take this very seriously, and I will do my best to, like I said, create a nice atmosphere for our visitors.
And Jake, my questions are probably for you. I'm just going to kind of think outside the box here for a second. Ms. Garrett, you own the hotel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so in the event, and I guess you lease space to stray cats?
No, I don't.
Okay, okay. So in the event that stray cats is no longer, then the liquor license is no longer? Because it sounds like it's two different entities.
Mr. Mayor and council members, if I could, the way I interpret the application is that DRG LLC will be doing business as Stray Cats 2 as the restaurant owner, so it really will be one and the same owner.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just interject, I think I know where you're going with this. There is a existing arrearage on the part of the hotel for lodgers' taxes. Now, of course, everyone knows that there are 3 bases upon which an application for a beer and wine license could be denied. Those 3 bases being if the property is not properly zoned, if it's in an area that prohibits the issuance of a license, or if it's contrary to the public health, safety, or morals. So I don't know that it's necessarily appropriate to consider that arrearage as part of this deliberation. I will note, however, that Ms. Garrett has made some exceedingly prominent good faith efforts to satisfy that arrearage, both individually tonight by presenting a check for at least half of that arrearage amount, and by communications with her attorney that have happened both today and last week, committing to meet the remainder of that arrearage by no later than the end of June. So we're going to work out an agreement to make sure that happens. I think it's important that you know all that, even though it's not necessarily appropriate to link it with this application.
And Ms. Garrett, thank you for being part of our community.
I appreciate that immensely, and I'm honored to be a part of the community.
Okay. So this is a public hearing, so is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for or against? Anybody? Please. Yes, please.
Thanks.
And you'll have to be sworn in. And
Okay.
Please state your name again for the record.
Certainly. My name is Daniel Williams.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do. I just wanted to say, again, I had no idea I would be speaking on anything here tonight. That's not why I was here. I was here as a parent and being connected with Taos Children's Theater. But I would like to say that my family and I have been customers, patrons of Don Fernando for many years, back when it was Holiday Inn and so on. My wife and I would go there on special occasions. We'd listen to the music. Never once did I see a problem at the bar that was inappropriate, and I realized that was under a different owners.
No,
but
it's the same owner.
Is it the
Yes,
same?
my
I
husband.
apologize, my mistake. But I would personally support it as an individual. It was always managed well. It was a pleasant environment, one that my wife and I, if it's loud, they would have liked to have had more business at times. But if it had been real loud, we wouldn't have been there. We would have been somewhere else. So I see it totally as a positive. They had a license in the past. They don't currently. I understand it was sold to another, to Walgreens, I heard. I don't know if that's correct. But regardless, it would help them be able to stay in business. And if this is not granted, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's going to happen. It's just too hard to stay. I volunteered with Taos Shorts. Don Fernando was an excellent supporter of people from out of town for Taos Shorts. I had the opportunity to meet some of the baseball players that were here for training that Don Fernando was hosting. So from what I can see, it seems they're doing a very positive job, a very responsible job, and I encourage the council to support this request.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to speak for or against? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And again, I'd like to applaud you for being part of our community. I think, council, I think this is one of them items that hopefully we can continue to help our businesses within our community to continue to grow and serve the needs of our community. I think this is one of those businesses that continues to give back to our community. I know they've hosted a number of events that she hosted on town events, free of charge. I don't know that has
We
anything.
would like to continue to do that as well. We want to support our community, and we have a room that holds 100 people. We're trying to enclose the rest of it, so we'll get to 200 people. And I would always like to invite all of you to hold whatever meetings you may need there at the hotel, and give you whatever space you may need, and support the council, Mayor Barrone, and the community as well.
Thank you. Councilor Peralta?
Yes, Ms. Garrett, I just have one question for
Yes,
you,
sir.
and that is, you're not within 300 feet of St. James, are you?
No, we are not.
Okay, because that's the closest.
That's the closest church.
And then the middle school is much further away, so
Yes,
there is
sir.
no requirement for a variance on 300 feet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Jake, this is just a beer and wine application, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor and council members, and only because Councilor Peralta brought it up, I did want to point out that we typically get sort of only a part of the application that ends up making its way into your packet, and I'm going to suggest that from now on, we'll provide the entire application, included in which, in this case, was a statement indicating that the St. James Church is 1,056 feet from the premises.
And Jake, the other thing that usually was a requirement is a list of servers. It's not a requirement. I know the reason I asked, in the county, we used to get a list of servers.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, it's required certainly by state law that any server under this license be a certified server pursuant to law. I believe, Mr. Mayor, what you may be thinking of is when we receive an application for a special dispenser's permit for a special event, they have to provide a list of those servers that will be serving at that specific event. At this stage in this application, it's not actually required.
Okay. So, councilors, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to state that I believe it was about a year ago that some folks from the State Main Street Program and Department of Economic Development did a walkthrough assessment of our community, and two of the things they identified and are not being as competitive as we could be was an evening public transportation people to get people from hotels to restaurants, drinking establishments, and that we had a limited number of hotels that could host events that people could, within that hotel, like in Santa Fe, have a drink at the bar and get a meal. So I would suggest that the more we can do that for public safety by having people can stay in the hotel and get all the services within that hotel, it makes us more competitive and also as a public safety advantage.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jake, but I believe that on a beer and wine license, you have to serve food in order to get your drink. And so you can't go to a bar and have a drink and then go to have a meal. So the question I have for you, are you able to use the beer and wine license in the banquet room?
Not at this time.
It'll
We are
be
going to
strictly at the
request
restaurant.
that. Well, we can use it in our meeting room, in the Ernie Blank room, but outside there, we can't use it because it needs to be completely enclosed, which at this time, right now, we are working on. And we will request that for that area.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. So what's the wish of the council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional information?
Mr. Mayor, my only suggestion is that you close the hearing.
I did already.
Oh, I missed it.
Thank you,
Opening and
Mr. Cotto.
closing? I apologize.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for keeping me straight. So, no further discussion. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuntu?
Yes.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
So, thank you. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Barrone and the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a recommendation that we get our counselor a cup of coffee before we go to the next public hearing.
That's a good idea.
Councilman, he usually doesn't wake up till 1 o'clock during the executive session.
So we'll go on to our next item, which is item B, and it is another public hearing. So again, we will open the public hearing for Palacio de Marquez Special Bed and Breakfast Dispensing License Application. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Good. How are
Great. You'll have to be sworn in.
Okay.
So,
Hi, please state your name for the record.
Chad Osment?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, could you just state your name again?
Chad Osment?
Into the, sorry.
Chad Osment.
Thanks, Chad.
thank you, Chad.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
So I'm here to represent Heritage Hotels and Resorts. They own Palacio de Marquesa, and I am the resident manager there. So this is just a beer and wine license. It's a special beer and wine license for a bed and breakfast to serve like at a reception, at an evening reception for our guests who come and stay with us. We took over the property about a year ago. So we've had this property about a year now.
Okay. Do you have a question? Still public hearing. So again, we'll ask the audience, is there anybody that would like to speak for or against? Have any questions? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Counselor?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, it's my understanding on this type of license that this is only time that you can serve this is in the evening to your guests. It's not an all-day sort of thing that you can do, right? It's just kind of a reception to welcome your guests.
That is correct. Up to 2 glasses of wine.
Okay. And it's not every day for them, it's just that.
Right, it's not every day. So it'd just be a reception, in the evening with appetizers as well.
Council, any other questions?
This will be our historic second one.
Second one.
Surprised we haven't seen more.
Yet.
So, again, so what is the wishes of the?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If none, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to item C, presentation of the 2014-2015 preliminary budget, and this is a public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to turn this over to Marietta, our finance director.
Mr. Mayor, do we have to swear her in?
She's not even paying attention.
Mr. Mayor, before Marietta begins, I've circulated a summary to you, which we'll read into the record, which I believe will highlight some of the points in dealing with this budget before we get into the details. Mayor and Council, tonight you have before you for consideration what I would term as a realistic, balanced, fiscally conservative, yet philosophically aggressive budget that attempts to successfully address the priorities identified by the prior administration, the changes in policy requested by the current administration, the immediate security and personnel needs of the town, and the future community and economic needs of both our residents and businesses. In short, a creative approach that attempts to do a lot of new things with nothing new to pay for it. This has been a difficult budget in that many of the normal certainties that make up the majority of the budget, such as revenues and personnel costs, have fluctuated throughout the budget process. And due to changes in performance and makeup of the local economy, changes in key staff and administrations, some of the information behind key assumptions in the initial draft by my predecessors have been unverifiable or open to interpretation, while some past practices appear to be simply unsustainable. While the budget on its surface appears to be balanced, the combination of a $600,000 operational deficit and granting $250,000 in increases in compensation and absorbing increases in para and medical benefit costs could only be achieved by shifting most one-time costs in next year's general fund operational budget into what we used to call at the county a 399 fund. This fund uses unspent cash from the current fiscal year to fund approximately $300,000 in one-time, non-reoccurring costs in next year's budget for such items as equipment replacement, roof repairs, radios, software upgrades. Only about 1/3 of these costs are being generated by the departments in areas that should be planned for going forward. But for that reason, immediately after the state-mandated adoption of this budget, the finance director and myself will begin re-examining the budget through a true zero-based budgeting process after July 1, justifying all costs at all levels in order to find even further savings. Savings to balance the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget were accomplished by requiring all departments to submit a 1% reduction in the currently approved costs for their departments under the fiscal year 2013-2014 budget and a mandatory 2% reduction in their previously approved requests for 2014-2015. In effect, we are trying to recapture allocations that in the past have gone unspent or underspent anyway. I want to thank each of the department heads for their cooperation in identifying those costs within each of their own departments where they felt they could be made without impacting the quality or level of services to the public. And in particular, I want to thank Marietta. It's one of those few times I've had an agonizing budget that actually was enjoyable. She has a great depth of knowledge. We're strongly recommending and planning that until we can re-examine the entire budget after July and until a clearer picture of the local economy can be determined by mid-year, that any increase in revenues accrued, any increased savings from unexpended line items in the current budget, and any savings from unfilled vacancies be directed towards completing the accumulation of a 2/12 reserve in the general fund and a 1/12 reserve in all enterprise and special funds. Of the significant changes you will see in the budget before you are the following. Requests for the funding of nonprofit and community activities will be handled by budgeting a fixed amount for that purpose that will be handled through a public RFP process that will request proposals for programs and services that competitively address the top community needs as determined by this council. Proposals will be scored in much the same way as CDBG applications are scored by addressing criteria such as critical services, matching amount, length of commitment required, and number of persons in need served. A $100,000 fund will also be established for a similar pilot RFP for economic development purposes. First priority will be given to projects that use the grant as a revolving loan fund, returning the investment immediately after the event. Second priority will be given to projects that generate as much or more than the investment in GRTs and lodgers tax. Return on investment in terms of jobs or tourism will be critical to such criteria. The budget proposes to use lodgers tax previously allocated to maintaining the convention center toward the recruitment of a highly skilled marketing, tourism, and public information officer to coordinate those efforts as they relate to economic development, as well as to manage the advertising budgets of the town. Funding is also in place to hire a full-time experienced grant and fund development coordinator to identify and secure funding not only for the town, but for community organizations the town identifies as providing essential public services in which we may not be able to fund or fully fund in more traditional ways. To pay for the grant and fund developer, we have consolidated and eliminated several entry-level positions in several departments and then eliminated those positions. Advertising dollars have been allocated in the general fund to assist both town and nonprofit events previously improperly charged as a direct cost to the lodgers tax. Under this budget, it is envisioned that the town will reassume the responsibility for the Arts and Cultural District, implement the Main Street program, and move toward the creation of a self-sufficient business improvement district within 4 years. The message is intended to be that, as a municipality, we will help our local entrepreneurs and our community groups become stronger and self-sufficient. We will assist the private sector in creating events that will generate tourism and make our downtown more attractive and festive to our residents. Along these lines, the current planning department will become the Planning, Community, and Economic Development Department and house most of these functions. In Public Works, we are addressing a backlog in grants, awards, and public works projects by redesigning the project management functions, to to hire out for those routine materials and quality inspections, and transferring our former procurement officer and grants manager to oversee the administrative functions of that office. By transferring the airport, our largest single capital project for the next 2 years, under Public Works, we consolidate all Public Works projects into one office and address the needs of both departments for administrative support personnel. In HR, we are consolidating positions and promoting the safety coordinator and often acting HR director to the permanent HR position, and eliminating her prior position by consolidating those functions into the remaining positions. In finance, our greatest need is for the capability to evaluate and reorganize our existing tax and debt structures, to shorten or reduce our obligations, I should also put in there our rate structures, and allow for more capital projects in the immediate future, as well as to increase our ability to do financial modeling and forecasting. We're proposing a position of business manager to assist and complement the current finance director. In the absence of our ability to recruit the expertise we need in an employee, we're also budgeting and have flexibility to hire a consultant as a financial advisor. To pay for that badly needed position of the business manager or financial analyst, we have eliminated the position of the assistant town manager. Public safety is a priority, and we have budgeted an additional partial position to the police department so that should an officer retire or an excellently qualified and certified officer be available, that we can react immediately. We are budgeting for 2 new police cars in this budget and have set aside a minimum of $350,000 for road and sidewalk repairs, with the goal of increasing that amount as we identify funds, and by not less than $100,000 a year until we reach $500,000. This is in addition to the numerous capital projects we are carrying over or initiating for roads, sewer, and water repairs or upgrades. We're also budgeting for an accelerated completion of the entire $24 million airport project within 2 years, not 3, without detracting from any other capital project we have scheduled. These are a few of the many highlights in the budget I'm submitting to you this evening, and we stand for questions. And Marietta will present a more detailed summary of the changes that we have made since the last budget session that you had, that you directed us on, and then if there are any individual budgets that you would like to have us address, we have a number of the department heads here and can answer those questions for you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Marietta. Just real quick, Rick, with regards to the saving to the balance for the FY 2014-2015 budget, you had asked or required all departments to submit a 1% reduction in the currently approved costs and a mandatory 2% in their previously approved requests, which I think is okay for the short term. I think for moving forward, though, we should probably really address the true cuts and cutbacks of each department rather than a straight 1% or 2%, because some may yield higher if we drop, in essence, dead weight programs that those departments are participating in. So just that's where I'd like to see us on that 1-2% reduction.
Yeah, Councilman, we'd initially just asked each of the department heads to go back and see what they can do. And with the exception of 2 departments, it really just sort of worked out that way, that as Marietta presented the historical data, it appeared that all the departments traditionally underspend. And what we wanted to do is, if we were going to count on that money to spend it in the following year, we wanted to make sure, absolutely sure, that we came before you and presented the budget knowing that money would be there. So that was the purpose of the 1% recapture.
So can we, in the near future, reevaluate each department to see if we can yield maybe higher savings out of each one, rather than, I mean, because to do a 1 to 2% reduction, which, you know, is good in financial practices, but it's really not practical across the board, because you'll cut, but you'll only cut your 2%. You're not going to cut excess.
And Councilman, it's an excellent point, and that is our goal, to do the zero-based budgeting after July. We just felt, unfortunately, because this administration and the key staff came in and we were so far along in the process, that we wouldn't be able to get that done in time to meet the state deadline. but it's an excellent point, and that is our goal.
Okay.
We'll start that right away.
And one other comment was just at the end of the year, when we get to end of year on our FY, and departments are looking to dump funds, just for the sake of dumping funds, that we don't assume that practice all over again, just for the sake of spending what is in your budget that's unnecessary.
Councilman, we issued an order that said that any item over $5,000, even if it was an approved item, had to be approved by the finance director and myself.
Okay. Thank you.
Marietta?
Mr. Mayor, good evening, council members, town manager. Everything that the manager explained is in the budget. What I'll do is I'll just go over the summary, and you have, I can't really pull it up on mine because it's landscape, so I don't want to bring it up. But I think you have it on your tab on your iPad. It's the second one, and it's just a summary of changes that we did. I focus more on general fund, but you can see just line item out what we did in eliminating a salary position out of the HR department. That was like $57,000. Planning, we did a couple of changes, added 23 to their budget for community and economic development events. Another big one out of there is facilities. We had facilities charge 2 employees to the visitor center budget, so we put them directly out of general fund because they are now with the new marketing and the marketing director position that we put. We have that was a big expense there, so we added them into general fund. We created the position in planning as a grant developer, and that costed approximately $55,000. And just moving positions and salaries and accounting for all the changes that we did make, we ended up with a beginning general fund expenditure. We started at $10,559,726, and we ended up with $10,574,949. More just moving around, absorbing positions that were vacant. So that was most of the changes that we did in general fund. In the visitor center, visitor and marketing budget, we added that position for the marketing director, and we also decreased the amount that was for those 2 employees, so it offset that by about $34,000 that we only needed. We also decreased the marketing contract to $385,000 from its original amount of $400,000. We moved out the advertising, and we did keep some advertising money in there for for marketing events that are true marketing events for advertising. We moved that money out into general fund, and also the radio ads. So really, in visitor center and marketing, the biggest expense was creating that position as a marketing director. The communications expenditures, we did some, there was an email from the county, I guess, in agreement to what the commitment was going to be. I worked with Amity on decreasing some of those expenses. For our share and for the county share, we're looking at $340,000 this year compared to $371,000 that we're doing right now, and that's based on 11 positions and whatever decreases that we did in that budget. So, and also decrease the revenues to reflect that amount.
Councilor Peralta?
Marietta, on the command center budget, does Amity feel that the $340,000 is adequate to meet her needs, particularly when everybody becomes certified and needs to be increased in pay?
I will have her come up in discussion with her. I worked with her, and she felt that whatever we did decrease there was sufficient, but I think she's here. And
Councilor, I asked the same question at the county meeting this morning because I was shocked it was 370 versus 340, and I'm going to turn to Amity, but they did say that the reason is because the certification and the upgrades will probably not happen till the next budget year, the way I understand, because of the training won't happen. It'll happen now, but the certifications won't happen till the next budget year, and I just thought I'd bring that up. But since she's here, I want to let her answer the question.
Okay, so I guess basically the best way to answer it then would be, what is your schedule to get the center up to par personnel-wise?
Well, we currently have a job announcement out right now to hire one person to offset the overtime costs that we're currently experiencing. And then, given that we were working with the town and also trying to meet the county's budget as well, we're trying to spread out the costs of acquiring personnel over to the next fiscal year so we can meet this year's budget requirements.
So what I'm looking for then is the scheduling of training and so forth to bring these people up to speed on where they should be and what we expect of them in order for them to provide the proper services, and therefore, you know, we're going to have to pay them for that.
Right.
And so I'm just saying, what kind of a timetable are you looking at? 6 months to do this, 6 months to do that, and then at what point in time would it be kind of like a ladder that you get 3 people on the ring first, and then the next ring is another 2 people, and so forth, so that it's not everybody hitting the budget at the same time, correct?
Actually, given the cost of training, we were actually going to bring everybody on board for I'm assuming what you're referring to is the medical training?
All certification.
Okay. Well, your staff...
In other words, what I'm saying is that what you want to have in your staff to provide the services you feel that we need to provide to our community.
Every staff member that we currently have is all trained up, minus the medical training. Given the fact that we're transitioning between centers and we've got new hardware, new software, and all of the new experiences that are going to come along, what I've done is I've laid that out so that they have up to the end of the calendar year is when we're anticipating the transition. So I have October, November, and part of December for all of the new system training. And then once they've got in between 3 to 6 months to prove their minimum requirements on that stuff before I'm willing to introduce new stuff, which pushes us into the next fiscal year for your medical. So I'm anticipating being able to have everybody medically certified by July of next year.
So if everyone is certified, except in medical at this point, is it your feeling that they're adequately paid, or should they be adjusted prior to getting the medical certification? In other words, and then adjusted then? I'm trying to keep staff.
I understand that. From the staff, they obviously feel they're underpaid. They don't meet the industry standard currently.
How far under the industry standard are they?
Your closest competitor is Red River, and they're about $1.50 off.
Okay, if you're looking at Espanola or Santa Fe, what would they be off?
Espanola is restructuring their pay plan, so I don't have current figures. We're on par with their old figures, but apparently they're going through the same problem. Santa Fe is they have such a large center that they have a wider pay range, but we're about 85 cents to $1.25, depending on the level that you compare to.
Councilman Peralta, I'm going to try to take Amity off the hook because she's in an uncomfortable situation that there's been a disagreement as to compensation between her future employer starting in January and our side of the table. What I would urge the town, having been on the other side of this, is that the county made a very strong case that under the current JPA, that the town really held all the cards and negotiated who was going to be hired, what was going to be paid, what level they were going to be paid. We're continuing to operate under that JPA. And the closer we get towards the physical facility actually being transferred in January towards the county, we're going to have less negotiating room. All we've done is, as you predicted, turn the tables. So I would strongly urge the town council and the mayor to press the county for a JPA to be completed as soon as possible that allowed the partners in the JPA to determine the salary of the director as well as the compensation levels based on certification of the dispatchers. Otherwise, we'll have just transferred the problem to a new building.
And also the issue there is, you know, if you get these people certified, particularly medical, if we don't compensate them properly, we're not going to keep them.
Right.
Because they become, you know, very valuable, a commodity on the open market.
Right.
And this is the reason that I'm trying to, and one of the reasons that I made the position that we should keep the budget at the 370 was to ensure that we had proper funding for staff in order to show them that they're important and valuable to us and try to keep them. But if we don't do that, you know, it's as you say, we're just kicking the can down the road. And the problem is it's not going to stay on the road, it's going to roll off. And that's the concern that I have, is that, you know, we've got to, if we're going to do this, it's got to be done right. And you're correct, we need to have a JPA, and we've been saying that for quite a few months, that it lays all this stuff out so that there's a proper board that oversees this operation and makes true, reasonable recommendations to then the parties who are involved in it. That's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it.
Councilor Gonzalez, and then we'll come back, unless, Councilor, you want to yield to Marietta?
Yeah, well, a little bit.
Go ahead.
Just a very clarification on the personnel. We have up to the end of December as their rates are right now, and then Amanda gave me some figures to plug in there. So I have a different rate for all those people in communications based on going January 1st through the end of the fiscal year. So we have half and half of the information that she gave me, just so that it may not still be enough, but there is something in there for the last 6 months based on the budget that we have.
In that 340?
In that 340 right now.
They do get a small increase, yes.
Okay. Councilor Gonzalez.
Okay, so I'm going to ask maybe a loaded question.
Thanks.
For you. With regards to the sufficiency of the budget for E911, and I mean, we're all anticipating that the switch turns on over there and there is no problems, but should there be any problems, seeing that the county's IT guy is now here with the city, how do we handle that, Rick or Amity?
Problems with what specifically?
IT, just anything crashing on IT with the system. And I'm going back again, Rick, to where the 340 mark is insane, or, you know, the county saying, you know, what's sufficient, what's not sufficient. I mean, I hate to get back into this.
Well, let me just clarify quickly that you actually have a year's grace period with all of the new equipment that you're buying, the new software, the new hardware, everything comes with a warranty. All we've got to do is get them here. And they come right away. As soon as you call, you open a ticket, and they show up. So if anything is wrong, it's automatically covered with your purchase in that first year. And then you have maintenance costs that you pay to continue that, because obviously you don't want anything to break with this serious of a system. So that
now
is addressed.
That's the system. I'm talking about the actual hardware coming into the system. Where do we?
Well,
I mean,
I don't think
who pays for that?
I don't think they're going to be disadvantaged by Conrad coming over here, because we've made it very clear that we consider this a public safety issue, and that anything he's needed for.
Are we sharing him? Basically,
we will if they need him, but the contract is really designed for the installation. That once, other than the telephony portion up to the Cassidian, which is the phone company's responsibility, the rest of it is really designed in the contract to be the responsibility of Motorola and Advanced Communications. The contract guarantees that they have to, on a certain date, flip it, and it works, no matter what it takes on their part to do that.
And I guess what I'm looking forward to, not in a positive or negative way, is come the new elections, should, you know, the new commissioners have a change of heart or a different mindset as to the direction that this goes. At what point, if we get to the point with no GPA and that table turning, where does the burden lie, and within whom, and are we back to just square one? And I mean, these are questions I have to ask because these are the questions that my constituents ask of me as well.
Well, obviously things are moving and progressing in a great direction right now. We're putting together the JPA. We're putting together a 911 board. This is a highly successful model nationwide as well as in New Mexico. You guys are really on the cusp of an absolutely outstanding program. We just need to dot our I's, cross our T's, and cross the bridge. We're right there. Once that's in place, there would be no reason to turn that around. You're going to have excellent service. You're going to have an excellent program. You're going to be a show place that everybody's going to come and look at.
Well, and outside of the facility, the glamour of the facility, for me, it's about the actual public safety aspect of providing the services that we say we're going to provide, and saying whether or not that 340, 371 model is sufficient, or if we should be digging deeper to increase that. I mean, that's the first point of contact in the event of emergency for anybody. And
You're going to get no argument here.
Outside of you, I mean, and that's just where I'm saying, Rick, you know, if we're you know, in even some bit of looking like a stalemate with regards to this, it was the whole reason that I've pushed over and over and over again to remove the financial, I guess, wherewithal out of the elected body's hands and put it right back into the hands of those that you all serve, which is this community. So just food for thought.
Okay, Councilman, I don't think that's an administrative or a personnel function. I think that's a political issue, and again, that's the reason for my urging that this body do whatever is necessary officially to set a time frame to get that JPA done as soon as possible with our partners, because having been on the other side, I can tell you that your interests are the same as the Ski Valleys, the same as Red Rivers, the same as Quest is.
Okay.
And Amity,
yes, sir.
In your view, how close are we to getting this before both bodies, the JPA?
From my understanding, both of the legal departments are working on it quite significantly, so it's just a matter of having them bring it before their bodies as soon as they've got the complete product. I can't. I've called.
Okay. I don't want to put you in the, Jake.
I like Amity's answer. No, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, it is a work in progress. I have attempted to kind of reinstitute a more weekly pattern of meetings between the staff, both administration and legal, between town and county in order to keep that ball rolling. There was, frankly, I think both upon the sort of agreement that we would just operate under our current JPA for the time being, there was sort of a loosening of that burden, and we really do need to crank that back up. And I will be communicating with Bob Malone on an at least weekly basis in order to make that happen. I'm not going to give you a date because I don't want to disappoint you, but we will strive to get it before you as soon as is possible.
All right. Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so go ahead. Any other questions? Go ahead then on your,
okay,
on your
I'm
presentation.
sorry. I said go ahead.
And I guess I do have one question. Since we're looking at that budget line item, has there been any negotiations, and I should ask this morning, about I want to say the county has only been paying a portion of their share. Has there been some agreement to bring that?
I'll yield to.
There's been an agreement. There's a communication from Mr. Archuleta in which he said they do not believe we have been spending at the 371 level, which is probably accurate.
Right.
But that if we show them what the actual expenses are, anything over the level, the 285 that they were paying, they will split the difference with us. And that's perfectly reasonable to us. Unfortunately, because of the budget and a few other things we're working on, we haven't gotten those numbers back to him, but we will do so shortly.
Okay, so we can recapture some of that. So-
Right, and not just for them, for ourselves too, so that'll save us a little bit on the reserve too, whatever we don't have to spend. So, and it's been an agreement the last year or two that we did it that way, but, so that's what we're looking at.
Okay, go ahead and continue.
So,
You're good.
well, maybe not, no. So on communications, that was one of the biggest changes on communications budget itself. And just like the manager said, we are not spending to the tune of that 371 for each of us. It's been more to the 550 to 625 level. So, if you just, I think if you have on your iPad, this is just the recap.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Marietta, I'm sorry, real quick, just as our youth counselor is leaving, I would just like to thank him, as he just indicated to this body that it's his last meeting, as he will soon venture off to college. And we wish you the best, Michael. Thank you for always sitting with us on this and being a great representative of our youth in this community. And we hope to hopefully maybe one day see you up here.
It was a huge honor to serve, and I've learned so much from the position. Thank you to everyone on this body and, of course, the former body. Renee, you've done so much, and just everyone who's been smiling faces every meeting, and just great people here. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, you'll be sitting up here.
Don't wait for 10. Too long. The younger, the better.
Thank you. Sorry, Marietta.
No, that's okay. I'm not even gonna look. I have my hard copy just because I can't even see up there. But you have your recap in front of you. If it looks like this is just the total recap of the townwide budget. Just to reiterate on the general fund, if you can see this 800 and, well, you can't see. Hopefully you can see it on yours. This 881,248 ending our 112th reserve. What we did is we've brought down our additional reserve to 597,213. Preliminary budget, we had approximately 800 and some, but based on covering the one-time costs and any other items that we had into the community grants, that brought it down to 597. So we do have our 112th plus maybe half of another additional 112th. In special revenue funds, really the only thing that changed there was, like I said, the visitor center budget, the communications budget that we just discussed, and on debt service, nothing changed on that, on those schedules. Capital projects, we'll go over that really in a few minutes, just going over the changes. There wasn't much there. Enterprise funds, we did do an increase to the landfill based on the rate increase. So those revenues went up from $986,000 to $1,129,000. That was like a $140,000 increase to the revenues in the landfill, which were needed because we didn't really have any kind of reserve. And right now we're just going to work with that, leave it in the fund there and see how the year goes through, probably mid-year, and then move that money out to a reserve like we do have our water and sewer asset management fund, something like that.
Councilor Peralta?
Real quick, Marietta, if you can remember, what is the cost for the residential user for hauling away their...
44 cents a month.
I know, but what was the total cost?
The total cost for the town's part?
Well, let's say, for example, myself personally, at home, when you pick up my stuff and send it off to the landfill.
For yourself, it's 44 cents a month.
Plus, what was it originally before?
Oh, it was, sorry, I didn't read those numbers. Let me think. I don't know. I can't tell you.
Can you remember?
I don't know, but we can look it up for you. From the
I deal with hard copies right here, and I did bring that up.
Including the recycling fee, I think it was like $12 or $13.
Well, it depends on the container size.
Well, I'm talking residential.
Residential? Yes, it could have gone up to, I think, about $13.40 was one of, if you had more than a weekly pickup and you had more than one dumpster. But for the average one that has one dumpster like me, 44 cents per month for the whole year, so whatever that is times 12.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because I just got my bill for Chama.
For which one?
For Chama.
Oh, for Chama. Oh, I was going to say, we haven't...
$17.80
A month?
a month
So we're
for
doing...
residential pickup.
So we're doing much better.
Yeah. So we're very reasonable in this town for taking care of our waste.
Right. So that was one of the I'm not even going here for the public, I'm sorry, but I'll go here. So that was, right, sorry. So right here was the revenue that changed quite, well, 139,000, which was needed, and based on the rate study, I just took the calculations, verified them with the Souter Miller and Associates that did those the study for us and the calculations. We'll go through a year and see what it actually comes out to be, but estimates are what they are, estimates. But they're good. Other than that, right now we're starting with a beginning balance of 14 million. Right here, 263,000. Our estimated revenues in total are 48 million, 3 something, I can't see. And our expenditures, total budget is $53,883,000 with an ending balance of 8 million something. 8,667,000. I think I need cheaters because I can't even read the numbers. So this is just overall townwide budget, which will be submitted to DFA by Friday because they're due the 1st, but 30th is Friday. And the preliminary budget, what will still change are these numbers here, the fund balances, depending on probably more capital projects. We have some projects in the works, Town Hall Drive, that we may have one pay estimate through the end of June, and whatever kind of construction things go on, that will reflect these balances right here. Also, general fund, I have a preliminary estimate, but depending on what happens in the last month, that will also change there. Nothing in here should change, none of these expenditures, except for, like I said, carryover projects, which will go into capitals if you don't have any direct questions on here. One thing we did do is on the historic district, we added $20,000 for a contribution from the county for the historic district. They for helping out with that historic district project. And I don't know, any questions on this in general?
I have questions.
Sure.
Is this a good time to ask?
Sure.
And I'd like to defer to the audience, and otherwise I'll go ahead and start. Anybody out there? Okay. As I look at our revenues, Marietta, Revenue Fund 164, the Water and Sewer Asset Management Fund, and I'm very grateful for your time, Mrs. Fambro. Is Mr. French here by any chance? Do we have any ideas, Mr. Bellis? We have an ending balance there of over $1 million. Can you enlighten us as to, unless you're busy trying to get Councilman Peralta's answer?
Looking up the rates, that's okay.
Okay. Do you have any idea what infrastructure is on the table, why that money is being carried over?
Which line item?
It's
the Enterprise Fund number 164. So
it's the French is coming up, I think I saw.
Oh, good. Oh, French. So, Mr. French.
It's live streaming, Counselor, so he ran from wherever he was because he was watching it live stream.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. French, I am just looking for ballparks. So I'm dealing with revenue funds and Enterprise Fund Water and Sewer Assets, line item 164. I certainly, French, you had no warning, but I'm just wondering off the top of your hat what kind of big projects that $1 million is being reserved for. Infrastructure projects, anything come to mind?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Barrone, actually that money is in there to start to develop an asset management program for the water and wastewater. We will get more into that when we start tapping into the funding for the Weimar area foothills water line, which encompasses not only the installation of a water line, but it touches down on SCADA systems and tank repairs or replacements or building of. So once we get through that program, we'll know a little bit more as to how to approach the actual asset management itself. In addition to that, we will have to be somewhat careful on that as to how we proceed, because some of it will be affecting what is in the Abeta settlement. So again, not getting real far into the program. That's probably the best answer that I could provide for you right now.
Thank you. As French and Mr. Bellis, Mr. Mayor, as you know, the Foothills Neighborhood Association, despite the fact that they have been annexed, well over 99% of those annexed citizens would like to have a voice and have the town hear their complaint. As you think about the infrastructure needs, are any of these affecting those homes up there in Foothills? And where I'm going with this, French, is until we actually hear the voice of the people up there in Foothills, it's my personal opinion that we wouldn't want to start putting massive amounts of money of infrastructure into that area until we settle this. I presume it's probably going to be settled. Mr. Caldwell is only here, well, hopefully he'll be here forever, but the intent was 6 months. So this is one of those items that Jacob will be passing on to the new town attorney if Jacob leaves, and if we find an attorney, two big question marks.
Jake told me he wasn't leaving.
What's your response to that, though, French? Are we talking about the Foothills, or are we talking about the S2S area and what I think of as the traditional Weimar area over by the hospital and in that area, and Foothills is a little bit further to the east and north?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hahn, again, the only work that we have in the hopper for the Weimar Foothills area is the installation of the water line. Now it's for a couple of reasons. One is to stabilize pressures. The other is to get a better water quality or better quality of water if we start looping the system, and of course to provide for fire protection. That is the only thing that we have talked about. And as far as I know, when the application was being done for this, the residents of the Weimar Foothills Association did have representation and input into that discussion.
So I'm a little confused when you say Weimar Foothills, and I've just referred to Weimar as Weimar and Foothills as Foothills. Am I mistaken here? Is Weimar Foothills inclusive of what I've been separating out as two distinct groups?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hahn, no, it's not. It would be, I think you called it the historic, or the historic part of the Weimar area, not necessarily the foothills. I'm used to referring to it as that.
I see. Okay, good. So that's going into some pretty serious infrastructure then.
It is.
So in our little family budget, I just can't squeeze out that $1 million to help Mr. Bellis. And
No,
next,
don't do that.
You need more like 2
I'll take it.
Okay. Next question, and I'm going to need Councilman Peralta's guidance on this, because I believe this was set up during your administration, I think. But briefly, Councilman Peralta, the Water Rights Fund. We've got another cool $1 million sitting in that, and I'd sure So what's the story behind that? Do we need $1 million in the water rights fund? What's the story there?
We could have 20 million and that wouldn't be enough.
For what?
It's for purchasing of water rights in the future as the town needs it. It's also to improve those water rights to get them to use, not reasonable, let me think of the term now, effective use. So there's only two, there's a town, it's not, God, what can I think? Keep thinking of state statutes, but it's not a statute. So it is a,
Do you have to have so much in reserve? Is that?
no, it's just that the fund was created to purchase water rights, and the fund was created by the sale of water rights or the sale of use of water rights that the town owned for future requirements that the town may have, and part of that is going to have to be used in the abated settlement eventually for some of the things the town needs to do to effectuate the settlement.
Right. So I was hoping that I was going to hear something a little bit different, which would be something like, well, with a beta coming to fruition, that might relieve us of that financial encumbrance. But I'm hearing just the exact opposite.
That's right. In fact, if you were listening to the ABETA information that was given out, the money that is coming from the feds and the state aren't even going to be close to adequate what is needed to really settle the case. And so this money, because it can be used for water rights, would assist us in being able to effectuate our requirements under the settlement.
And is it possible, Mrs. Fambro, to determine, given the impact of a beta and the need for some water rights, to determine if there's, from my small businessman's perspective, a net profit that we can squeeze out of there to help Mr. Bellis?
In order to do that, you have to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
Right. It's
oh, well,
by
we
an
can do
ordinance.
that.
I'm not going to change it.
No.
Well, I'd sure like to look at it, and that may impact the feasibility study that we want to do regarding flat rating sewage fees, even though this is an enterprise fund. But let me tell you, Councilman Peralta and Mr. Mayor, pending your approval, where I was going with the Water Rights Fund. When we talk about a Acequia revitalization, considering our two main feeders off the village and the Rio Fernando, that Fernando could sure use just a bunch of work. It's overgrown. Whatever water is up high is getting sucked out. There's some interesting dam structures east of town. The point that I'm trying to make is that as I worked on this budget all holiday weekend, and it was a rip-roaring holiday, I'm just trying to squeeze money to get it into our infrastructure, to help Mr. Bellis, to revitalize our acequias, to help the poor Rio Fernando. That's our second main feeder, and it's dry. So I guess, Councilman Peralta, I'm going to need your guidance, and perhaps with the audit committee. I don't know if it's appropriate for the audit committee to look at enterprise funds to try and help invest in not only water, sewage, and infrastructure that French needs, but what? Yeah.
That is really not the function of the audit committee. Okay. That would be much more a function of a finance committee that would be in line with what our manager was talking about when you hire a financial consultant. And you would set down a committee to work with that consultant to see how you would change the financial structure within the town to try to generate more funding. That's where that should be. What our job is to look at is how do we keep ourselves from doing the wrong thing as far as the auditors are concerned.
Yeah, the magic words that I heard were the audit committee is an advisory board. so I'm thinking I need advice for the Rio Fernando. Okay, but enough said on that. It's looking like the Water Rights Fund is very much a fluid issue. We're not quite sure the impact that a beta is going to have.
Councilmember
We're never
Hans,
going to need it.
if I could say a little bit of something on the Rio Fernando. The problem with the Rio Fernando that we have is that there's a portion that's within the town and a portion that's within the county, and it would really take a combination of town and county resources to make that thing happen, because there's some things that we don't have any jurisdiction over, and therefore we can't get into it because it doesn't.
Right, so that makes me think of the MOU that we were hopefully going to be looking at tonight with the Taos County Soil and Water Conservation District. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to guess you've been so hammered you just haven't had time to deal with it.
Mr. Mayor and council members, Councilmember Hahn, that's right. When we met, we discussed using a template that exists already, and as it turns out, when I reviewed the template, which is in the form of an MOU between the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District and the BLM, and it's for purposes of Taos Soil and Water assisting in the development of a management plan on the new national monument. And it really doesn't have any acequia specific or riparian restoration specific terms. So I'm sort of faced with either starting from scratch or trying to find a better template. And that's what I'm engaged in right now, is reaching out to other similarly situated entities to try to find a better, more appropriate template, because starting from scratch is just kind of a non-starter for me right now.
Right.
So I assure you it's on my, it's very much on my list of to-dos before I leave next week, is to try to get something drafted to start throwing around for review.
If there's...
I'm gonna take this opportunity also to kind of speculate about the water rights fund. I agree wholeheartedly that as a fund established by ordinance, I don't believe a future governing body should exercise any discretion in revisiting how those accumulated funds are spent. Now, funds that may be accumulated going forward certainly could be dealt with by a modified ordinance if that's something that you wanted to consider. I also will say that there may be some flexibility in how we determine those funds should be used appropriately. The ordinance is not entirely clear or specific that they can only be used to purchase water rights. I think, though, that the intent of the ordinance was that those funds be reserved in order to enhance the town's inventory of water rights and the enforceability of those rights. And I think that's the lens those expenditures should be viewed through in the future, unless there is a change to the ordinance.
Councilor Peralta and then Councilor Gonzalez.
Jake, there's also a provision within that ordinance, though, that says that the money can also be used for the perfection of those water rights, including the deliverability of them. Okay, so there is some flexibility in there, but it's really geared to preserving the valuable water that is necessary for the future growth of the town.
And Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Peralta, one thing that only just occurred to me was, I'll just use this as an example of how we might view that flexibility going forward. You know, we spend a lot of money consulting with hydrologists and hiring experts to assist us in matters like the abeta and peripheral matters that I believe we now take out of our general fund. That's...
We take it out of the water.
It is, okay, never mind, strike that.
Yeah.
Back to the drawing board, Councilor Hahn.
Mr. Mayor?
Sorry.
Just real quick, I guess, and I do have some reservations with regards to how the water rights fund is used for anything pertaining to water rights up and including up to legal fees. I mean, because we can deplete that fund pretty fast. And I'd like to see it more set straightforward that it's for securing water rights, and not to the point of, you know, and I completely get it, the hydrology thing with our water rights, but in some instances it doesn't even pertain to the securing of a water right that we're utilizing the funds. So I question whether or not we've used the fund in ways that are demeaning to its purpose. So for me, I'd like to see the ordinance cleaned up and strictly utilized only for securing water rights, not this broad scope of saying, well, let's hire an attorney because we need to fight a water rights case, or let's call a hydrologist because we want to see what the climate has impacted our water. But for the actual securing of a water right, that's what I would like to see happen with that ordinance, because I think at some point it would just get picked apart. And I mean, that can be a whole other future discussion. I am not opposed to setting up some type of an ordinance that would allow us to use as a vehicle to revitalize the acequias. But I think completely aside from anything that we would need to future secure a water right.
I appreciate this discussion, but we better keep moving. So, Mr. French, here comes a curveball that you and I haven't talked about, nor have I had a chance to talk to Marietta or anyone else. But a very astute citizen asked me this question before the meeting, and I'll try and put it in, you know, that testing that we have done out at the sewage plant, there's special folks out there that do all the testing for everything out there at the plant. And I want to say their initials are OMI, but I think of the Office of the Medical Investigator, and I know that's not right. But the question is this, French. As I recall, we're spending about $1 million a year with these people. What are the chances, this citizen asked me, of bringing this in-house and getting Mr. Bellis a few extra dollars that way? It's curveball.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, that's more like a knuckleball, but at present, we don't have anyone on staff that has the expertise to manage the wastewater treatment facility. That these people are borderline chemists, or they are chemists, and they understand the complexity of the plant, and they are certified to be doing this type of testing and monitoring and evaluating.
It's an interesting knuckleball. Shall I continue on with some of my knucklehead questions? Okay, I apologize, but a sense of humor at this hour is not a bad thing. I was really glad to hear about the nonprofits collaborating. Mr. Bellis, thanks for organizing that. As I was looking at parking meter estimates, it felt to me that $100,000 estimate is a little high, but after talking with Marietta, she feels it's pretty accurate, and we're only talking about $20,000. A city councilor's salary, I might add, $20,000. So it's peanuts.
Lower paid